Chapter 935. Pass a message to the Demon Emperor? Zuo could not help but feel puzzled. What message do you want me to pass? Why don't you let Long Yuxing pass it? This is the successor of your legacy. However, no one could answer that question. The Azure Dragon Sage's eyes were deep. He pondered and hesitated. After thinking for a while, he slowly said, "This sentence is, I, Azure Dragon, have not let you down in this life." The last 8 words were said in an unusually heavy and emotional tone. He had addressed the Demon Emperor as you and not you. The meaning behind it was self-evident. Zuo was taken aback. Wasn't this sentence ordinary? As for specially bringing it, the Moon Lord smiled faintly. Why do you have to take it to heart, Lord Sage? Actually, thinking about it carefully, if you and I were in that position, it would be difficult for us to be considerate. The Azure Dragon Sage chuckled. Everyone knows how to reason and change their tricks. They are just ingenious. However, I'm not in that position. Therefore, I can still complain. The Moon Lord smiled and said, mischievous. The Azure Dragon Sage smiled and said, Fairy, I'll leave my sword behind. Kid, you have to use this Azure Dragon Divine Sword well. The Moon Lord smiled and said, I won't leave my sword behind. My sword and my belongings are very important to me. The Azure Dragon Sage tilted his head slightly. It was his posture and expression after tens of thousands of years. He smiled. Important? Fairy, that legend of yours. Fairy hung. He smiled faintly. Time's up, Lord. The last sentence is a little lazy. Before she finished speaking, the scene had already frozen. Everything around them returned to its original state. The Moon Lord stood while the Azure Dragon Sage sat. He tilted his head slightly and smiled. Both of them were smiling, but they no longer moved. Then Zuo and the others felt the world spin. When their minds stabilized, and they looked up, they realized that they had already returned. They were still in their original positions, looking at the Azure Dragon Sage and the Moon Lord. Only the aura of confrontation between the two of them had disappeared. Zuo tried to move, and sure enough, he could move freely. He opened his mouth subconsciously and said, I feel like I'm in a dream. Me too. Me too. This is not a dream. This is definitely not a dream. Zuo sighed softly. This should be the Azure Dragon Lord using his last bit of life force to cast time reversal, eternal mirror image. It allowed us to clearly see the final scene that belonged to the two of them. It allowed us, the fated people, to clearly understand the cause and effect of what happened back then. She exhaled softly and said, the cultivation and strength of these two seniors are truly, exceedingly powerful. Her voice was filled with respect and admiration. She looked at Azure Dragon and the Moon Lord with admiration and respect. Facing such a great expert, no one could disrespect him or not look forward to him. Zuo, Long Yuxing, Wan Lixiao and Gao Qiao felt the same way. Let's kowtow to these two seniors first, Zuo suggested. All right. The 5 of them knelt down side by side and kowtowed 9 times respectfully to the Azure Dragon Sage and the Moon Lord. Then Zuo, Wan Lixiao and Gao Qiao kowtowed in front of the Moon Lord and respectfully picked up their jade pendants. Long Yuxing kowtowed in front of the Azure Dragon Sage and swore to the heavenly Tao that he would never hurt the Azure Dragon 7 stars. Then he carefully walked forward. The Azure Dragon Sage's hand, which was originally holding the jade pendant, had indeed slipped to the side after Long Yuxing swore to the heavenly Tao, revealing the jade pendant and ring. Long Yuxing bowed again and reached out to take the ring and the jade pendant. He still did not check them. Instead, he just held them with both hands and bowed again. On the other hand, Zuo had already put away the triangular jade pendant that had fallen on the ground. Perhaps others would not notice, but how could Zuo not recognize it? This gray and inconspicuous triangular jade pendant was made of the same material as his broken jade pendant. However, the moment Zuo put it away, he immediately wrapped it with spiritual energy and threw it into his spatial ring. He did not choose to directly try to fuse it with anything. This was Zuo cautiousness. He did not want to take unnecessary risks. He was really a little afraid that the jade pendant would suddenly fuse with his body, and cause a change that was beyond his expectations. Zuo was sure that as long as the two pieces of broken jade came into contact, there would definitely be a change. And now, there were still many treasures in this palace that had not been collected. Under the gaze of the four people, Zuo stood in front of the throne with a serious face and bowed respectfully. Then he stood up and said, "Respected Azure Dragon Sage." Cough cough. When Gao Qiao heard Zuo tone, she subconsciously thought of the atmosphere of the advanced model, giving a report at a conference. She could not help but choke. "My Zuo is amazing. Respected Azure Dragon Sage, this is your residence. As a junior, I should not be so presumptuous. However, you have already passed away for many years, and we have worked hard all the way until now. It can be said that we are extremely poor. Many times during our cultivation, we could not even bear to use a piece of Astral Soul's jade. But you can use more expensive cultivation materials to build a house and make a chair." Zuo sucked in a mouthful of saliva, because he suddenly discovered that the large chair of the Azure Dragon Sage was made from the geocentric Astral Soul's jade. Moreover, it was a complete piece of Astral Soul's jade, and there was not the slightest flaw. Evidently, it was made from a whole piece of geocentric Astral Soul's jade. Such extravagance was completely unprecedented, and it made him gasp in amazement. "We have really experienced too many difficulties and hardships along the way, and every step we take is extremely difficult. Now you already have a successor, and you have already handed over your matters clearly. Now, there is no use in forcefully keeping the treasures in this palace. I wonder if there is a warehouse or something in your Azure Dragon Sage palace. Therefore, us juniors, cough cough, take it that you have pitted the children's difficulties in cultivation, and are giving your successor some benefits." Zuo looked at the Azure Dragon Sage anxiously and said, "If you do not say anything, I will take it that you have agreed, and tacitly agreed." "Thank you, Lord Azure Dragon Sage." Zuo bowed and saluted. Then he stood up and said, "What are you all standing there for? Lord Azure Dragon has already agreed. Don't be idle, go and move the things quickly." Zuo was very anxious, because in the image just now, the two people had clearly said that they would not leave the Azure Dragon Sage Palace behind. After the inheritance was completed, there would definitely be some other mysterious method to destroy it. That it was the sentence, "Fairy, I will leave my sword behind. Boy, you must use this Azure Dragon Sage sword well." And the sentence, "I will not leave my sword behind. This sword and the things that I carry with me are of great significance to me." It reminded Zuo firmly. It must be known that the sword of the Moon Sovereign was clearly still in her hands. If she did not have other preparations, why would she not leave it behind? Why could she not take it away? She was already dead. Why would she not leave it behind? According to common sense, she had to leave it behind, whether she wanted to or not. Therefore, there must be something fishy about this, something very fishy. Besides, since such peerless experts had already lost their lives, they would definitely not leave their corpses behind for others to trample upon. Even if they were to be buried, it was impossible for them to leave it behind if they were not at ease. This was the final dignity that belonged to the experts. Zuo, who was more simple-minded, could not think so much at once. She could not help but scold. "Xiaoduo, the two seniors have not been buried yet. Aren't you being too impatient? Sister, my dear sister, can you hurry up? I will explain to you later." As he spoke, Zuo had already rushed to the door. He looked up at the huge Azure Dragon statue and reached out to put it into the Azure Dragon statue was so big that even the space ring from the flood which could not contain it. However, when Zuo tried to put it away, it still did not move. With a quick thought, he took out the 9x9 cat hammer and smashed it with all his might. Everything on this statue was good stuff. Every scale was an excellent material. How could he miss out on this opportunity? Rumble, rumble, rumble. The claws were smashed into several pieces. Zuo hurriedly put them all into his interspatial ring. Then he jumped up and put away all the pearls on top of the hall. He only left one pearl for illumination. Then he went around in circles to collect things. He called out, Hurry up, there is not much time left. I think this place will be gone at any time. Hearing this, Long Yuxing seemed to have woken up from a dream. He and Wan Lixio hurriedly began to collect things. Zhua Xiaonian also began to collect things, but her movements were more chaotic. Gao Qiao was the only one who quickly came to the same conclusion as Zhua Xiaoduo when he started putting on an act. She was also the first person to respond to Zhua Xiaoduo's orders. However, the space in her spatial ring was relatively limited. She only focused on the most valuable things she knew. Everyone moved together and collected things wantonly. They searched the halls one by one. The Azure Dragon Sacred Hall was very big. There were so many good things in the main hall of the Azure Dragon Sacred Hall. Even the building materials of the Azure Dragon Sacred Hall were emitting rich spiritual energy. They were all good things that everyone knew. After cleaning up the two side halls, Zhua Xiaoduo's eyes lit up. He found a back garden. Although there were many weeds inside, the rest of the spiritual plants and spiritual materials were extremely rare. Some of them were even rare treasures of heaven and earth that were rarely seen in the world. Oh yeah, without hesitation, Zhua Xiaoduo took out the super big shovel of heavenly witchcraft copper. With a shovel, he shoveled all the soil and herbs into the space of the void extermination tower. Almost 10 cubic meters of soil was dug into the ground with a shovel. Hurry up, Zhua Xiaoduo called out. Nian Mao, hurry up and work with me. Chapter 936. The soil here obviously had a certain amount of spirituality. Naturally, he could not let it go. Besides, there should be the essence left behind after the spiritual herbs had rotted. No matter what, it was the accumulation of more than tens of thousands of years. How could he waste it? In less than 3 minutes, the entire herb garden had been dug down to a depth of 300 meters. Even the walls of the herb garden had been removed. Zhua Xiaonian stood aside. Looking at this scene, she could not help but be stunned. This was too ruthless. Was it necessary? Was it really necessary? Digging 3 feet into the ground already implied that someone was extremely greedy. Zhua Xiaoduo was not just digging 3 feet into the ground, but 1,000 feet into the ground. Then, she saw Zhua Xiaoduo running toward another hall. As he ran, he shouted, Nian Mao, quick, quick, quick. Zhua Xiaonian was speechless. She looked up at the majestic Azure Dragon Holy Palace. Was this place really going to disappear? Xiao Long led the way in front, and also ran very fast. Boss, there is a warehouse here. It should be the treasury of this place. Before Zhua Xiaoduo arrived, the hammer had already arrived. With a loud bang, the door of the treasury was smashed open. He rushed in without stopping. He didn't even take a closer look at what was inside. He had already taken 3 shelves into the space of the Tower of Annihilation. Zhua Xiaoduo really didn't care about anything else. He just kept everything in a frenzy. Right now it was a race against time. Everything else was insignificant. 15 seconds later, Zhua Xiaoduo rushed out. With a hammer, another door was smashed open. Is there any more? Zhua Xiaoduo shouted. Everyone knew that he was shouting for Xiaolong. Xiaolong said, there is one more over there. Quick! In the hall. A cloud of mist rose. It gradually blurred and filled the entire Azure Dragon Holy Palace. Zhua Xiaoduo shouted, hurry up and grab it. It is almost gone. Long Yuxing and the others had already seen the changes. They had long lost their original gentleness and elegance. Even Gao Qiao and Wan Lixio were taking whatever they saw. They even took away a lot of floor tiles that the fog was getting thicker and thicker. Finally, a voice slowly sounded. Fairy, your wish has been fulfilled. It is time for us to leave. A gentle and beautiful voice replied. The children are all here, right? Unfortunately, I can't see them now. I really want to see this world again. The Azure Dragon Sage chuckled. We can't see. Let's go. The little fellows have taken the things? It can't be that fast, right? There's an especially smart and obedient one inside. Alright, let's go. Fairy, please. We've been fighting for our entire lives. Today we'll die together. It's fate. I wonder, is the moon in the sky still as round as before? The lunar star lord sighed in disappointment. The remaining trace of divine sense from back then was suddenly activated. This is no longer our world. We will never meet again in the human world. A sigh filled with vicissitudes of life. With a faint sense of loss and disappointment. Haha, it's over. Then in the Azure Dragon Sage Palace. A huge force was suddenly activated. With a boom, Xiaoduo and the others were directly sent flying. Everyone couldn't help but stay in midair. Then, they saw the huge Azure Dragon Sage Palace below them disappear instantly. It disappeared without a trace. Xiaoduo was still holding a large stone from the palace wall in his hand. He stood in midair with a dumbfounded expression. It's really gone. It's gone just like that. My heart hurts. Only now did I realize that the entire palace was built with astral soul stones. And those pillars. Those pillars. Thinking of those pillars, Xiaoduo's heart was bleeding. Those were all treasures. I didn't touch them immediately, because I was afraid that it would cause the palace to collapse. I even wanted to carry them all away. Now, I don't have the chance. Such a good opportunity. It won't come again. It won't come again. My heart hurts so much. Puff puff puff. The 5 of them were like dumplings being dropped into a pot. They fell from a height of thousands of meters and landed on the soft snow. At least they were still able to maintain their posture in midair. Although they fell, their feet still touched the ground first. With the soft snow cushioning them, although they inevitably sank into the snow, they didn't look as bad as before. But even so, they couldn't help but cry out in alarm. However, they soon realized that they had regained their ability to move the moment they touched the ground. They immediately activated their martial arts and jumped out, laughing heartily. What a pity! There are still so many treasures. Xiaoduo's face was filled with indescribable heartache. When I told you to hurry up and grab the things, why didn't you respond? You're really too slow. Otherwise, we could have grabbed more things. Xiao. It's not that I want to scold you, but you've already reacted. Why are you still so picky? How could you forget that your so-called knowledge, and experience are based on your current knowledge? Everything in the Green Dragon Supreme Mansion, more than 90% of them, are high-end goods beyond our knowledge. Of course, you can take as much as you can. You're just looking for things that's buying the casket and returning the pearls. It's like buying the casket and returning the pearls in the textbook. Unexpectedly, it's in front of me. Xiaoduo's team. You really make me sad. I'm so sad that I didn't have time to take out so many treasures. Gao Qiao, face was full of embarrassment. Of course, she was the first to react, and her actions were only slightly slower than Xiaoduo's. However, her efficiency, frequency and quantity were all the lowest among the others. Firstly, the space ring on her hand had the smallest capacity. Secondly, she really did choose the things she knew, and the things she knew were of the highest value. The things in the Green Dragon Supreme Mansion were of such a high level that they were far beyond the scope of knowledge of Xiaoduo and the others. Take the simplest example, the Green Dragon Throne. If one hadn't seen the geocentric astral soul's jade, how could one know or imagine that someone would be so extravagant as to use a whole piece of geocentric astral soul's jade to carve a throne? But on a deeper level, whose throne was that? That was the throne of the Green Dragon Sage, who used a whole piece of geocentric astral soul's jade to carve the throne. Wasn't it reasonable and appropriate? Furthermore, the Green Dragon Supreme Mansion was the personal cave of the Green Dragon Sage, and the whole mansion was mainly made of the jade of astral souls. What else was there? It was still reasonable. Xiaoduo and the others didn't realize it until the end, but they didn't dare to think in that direction. Gao Qiao's method, under normal circumstances, couldn't be said to be wrong. However, in the Azure Dragon Senior Mansion, it was a big mistake. She would definitely miss out on many precious treasures. However, this was also a matter of fate. Xiaoduo knew what she was thinking when he saw her expression. He said, Xiao, you're very smart, but you're still a little lacking. The seniors have already passed their inheritance to us. Naturally, they hope that we can become as strong as possible, as fast as possible. But how can we become strong without resources? All the resources in the main hall, the entire Green Dragon Supreme Mansion, and the Green Dragon Sage Hall are actually resources that the seniors left for us. Why should we be picky? Naturally, we have to collect as many resources as we can within a limited time. Why don't you think about it carefully? If the green dragon sage was the only one here, it would be right for us to bury him. But the moon sovereign is also here. The moon sovereign is so beautiful. How could they be at ease leaving her body behind? If someone blasphemed against her, even if they only had blasphemous thoughts, it would be a great insult. Wouldn't they die with everlasting regret? Therefore, they must have left behind a backup plan to completely erase their remains from this world. Their disappearance will inevitably lead to the disappearance of this region. Isn't this a logical and inevitable thing? Since that's the case, if we don't take as much as we can before they leave, are we going to fight for it in the future? And what we snatch might not even be comparable to what we have here today. There's something wrong with your brains. Zhua Xiaoduo's words were filled with anger and resentment that he failed to live up to expectations. Zhua Xiaoyan waited for him to finish speaking before she said in a low voice, Xiaoduo, you have your reasons for saying this, but you're still biased. We've already gained a lot from this trip, but you're thinking twice. You want to take all the benefits. This is both right and wrong. Our reverence and respect for our seniors prevent us from doing such a thing. This is the most beautiful feeling in the world. It's also the most beautiful inheritance in the world. This respect is the true meaning of beauty, even if we lose some benefits because of this. As long as we can pass down this respect, I feel that it's far more valuable than some cultivation resources. At least it can make the world more beautiful and more humane. Zhua Xiaoyan's words resonated with Gao Qiao, Long Yuxing, and Wan Lixio. They all nodded. Zhua Xiaoduo also pondered for a moment and said, Sister Nian, you're right. I'm too eager for quick success. Then he hurriedly said, but I snatched things mainly for your sake. I'm more afraid that the seniors' things will go to waste. That's not necessarily disrespectful to the seniors. Everyone burst into laughter. How could they not understand Zhua Xiaoduo's character? Although Zhua Xiaoduo behaved inappropriately most of the time, there was no one who could criticize him when it came to respecting his teacher. His respect sometimes flowed on the surface, but it was rare. Most of the time, he kept it in his heart. If anything happened to the teacher he liked, Zhua Xiaoduo would run faster than anyone else. Come. Let's find a place to share the loot. There's no need to share the loot. This time, everyone has their own gains. Although Zhua has more, in the end, most of the gains are still ours. Long Yuxing laughed. When we lack something, I'll write you an IOU. Gao Qiao smiled sweetly and said, what a coincidence. I was thinking the same thing. Zhua Xiaoduo said angrily. But when can you pay off your debt? Long Yuxing and the other two laughed in unison. Boss, we'll remember your kindness. We'll never forget it. As for the IOU, we'll definitely pay it back in this life. Chapter 937. Zhua Xiaoduo's face darkened. Fuck, can you guys be any more insincere? Long Yuxing looked at the azure dragon divine sword in his hand. His eyes were filled with fondness as he said, Zhua, I feel that with this sword, this trip is already worth it. Zhua Xiaoduo snorted and said, the most valuable things you obtain from this trip should be that jade pendant and that ring. This sword, to you, it's just a source of disaster. Remember to use your original sword when you fight your enemies. Don't use this sword unless it's necessary. This kind of peerless divine weapon will definitely bring about a great disaster. I understand that part. Long Yuxing nodded. We should still look at our gains and report to boss. Gao Qiao suggested. No need. Zhua Xiaoduo refused. Your gains are your fate. There's no need to tell me anymore. You should know what secrets and inheritances you obtained. In the future, if there's a need, you can take the initiative to help. There's no need to tell me your secrets. My brain is too small to hold so many of your secrets. Ha ha ha. The three laughed. This is not a safe place. You guys go first. Wait until you reach your respective safe zones, then we'll proceed. Zhua Xiaoduo began to chase them away. All right. There's nothing for you guys to do here. Hurry up and go. The three of you will go together. Long Yuxing, you two will be responsible for sending Gao Qiao to the edge of Fenghai. Make sure she's safe before leaving. Okay. Long Yuxing and Wan Lixio nodded. If there's anything on the way, discuss it with Gao Qiao. If there's a difference of opinion, listen to her. Shuo instructed. Understood. What about you? Wan Lixio asked. Your sister-in-law, and I will be staying here for a few more days. Shuo sighed. Your sister-in-law and I are both very busy. We have too little time and are too busy. For the sake of the world and the safety of the continent, we are cautious and conscientious. We work so hard that we don't even have time to date. Before he could finish his sentence, Long Yuxing, Wan Lixio, and Gao Qiao had disgusted expressions on their faces as they flew away at top speed. Zhuo Xiaoyan was blushing as she pursed her lips and smiled. Seeing Zhuo Xiaoduo spouting nonsense, his heart was filled with joy. Those guys are finally gone, they're all gone. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed. Each and every one of them is so annoying. They follow behind me like bugs. It's as if they'll never grow up. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked melancholy. Out of so many people, I'm the only one who's a little more mature. What should I do if I don't think for them? Zhuo Xiaoyan nodded in agreement and said, I think so too. My puppy is the best. As soon as Zhuo Xiaoyan said this, Zhuo Xiaoduo was a little at a loss because he really didn't expect Zhuo Xiaoyan to agree. He couldn't help but ask suspiciously, truth? Ahahaha. Zhuo Xiaoyan laughed. It turns out that you know you're bragging. At least you have a little self-awareness. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face suddenly darkened. He looked at Zhuo Xiaoyan with grievance. Okay. My puppy is always the best. Zhuo Xiaoyan comforted him softly. No. Zhuo Xiaoduo pouted. I want kisses, hugs, and raised high. I want to see Miss Cat take off her clothes. Damn it. I was wrong. It was a slip of the tongue. At this moment, a few long howls suddenly rose to the sky. The 4 bodyguards directly flew up from the heavy snow not far away. They swayed freely in the air for a while, shaking off the snow and dust on their bodies. In another direction, about a dozen miles away, 2 figures also soared into the sky. As soon as these 2 people rushed up, they immediately fled in the opposite direction. On the other side, a tiger guard shouted loudly, Dao League, stop. But the 2 people didn't have any intention of replying. Instead, they moved faster and disappeared in a flash. A bunch of bastards. The sword guard cursed angrily. This time you'll suffer. There was no reply from the other side. The 4 people calmed down and looked at each other. They all saw the fear on each other's faces. Just now, when he was suddenly immobilized, he couldn't move a single part of his body. Even his little fingers and eyelids couldn't blink. He felt as if he was falling from the sky like a stiff rock. Then, they suffocated in the snow until they were half dead. If it were an ordinary person, they would have suffocated to death. But because their cultivation was high, when they suffocated, although they fainted, they didn't die immediately. Now they finally got rid of that pressure. The 4 people only felt their hearts beating fast. This feeling, they had never felt it before. What was this feeling? How could there be such a scary person in this world? How could such a terrifying pressure be possible? One of them opened his mouth and tried to dig out. The 3 of them turned to look, and felt a little strange. Why did you suddenly become so fat? This guard was obviously much more burly than usual. Steam was rising from the bodyguard's body. He said angrily, I went in with my mouth open. All the way to the bottom. Fuck, I had a stomach full of snow. Now my stomach is so cold. I'll circulate my martial arts to stimulate my digestion. Those that have already been digested can only pee in a while. Damn it. Ha 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 ha. Where are those little guys? I could still feel Zhuo Xiaoduo's aura just now. Where did he go? Don't let anything happen to him. Then why are you still talking nonsense? Let's go and find him. Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan made a prompt decision to hide their aura the moment those masters rushed out. Then they walked under the snow for a while. Small people like them didn't dare to get involved in a fight between masters and immortals. It was more important to leave as soon as possible. Zhuo Xiaoduo led the way while Xiaolong led the way. They didn't know how far they went. Finally, when they passed by a cliff again, the 2 of them went deeper into the snow. Then they went all the way down to the end of the cliff. Using the method of digging, they dug a hole at the bottom and sneaked in silently. This was something they had no choice but to do. It was also the safest method they could use. It wasn't that Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't want the 4 masters to follow him. In fact, if Zhuo Xiaoduo had the final say, He really wanted the four masters to follow him for a long time. They could even follow him to the toilet. That was the safest way. And awe-inspiring. Very stylish. However, the problem they had to face now was that Swordsmanship's Ice Soul adventure was different this time. The details couldn't be known to others. Even Long Yusheng and the others were chased away by Swordsmanship, let alone others. The Ice Soul fortuitous encounter would involve a lot of karma. For example, how did Swordsmanship find this treasure ground? Previously, when they were searching for the Green Dragon's sacred palace, they could say that everyone had a feeling. During that time, they searched the entire Whitehead Mountain for so long, but this time, he found it almost without any twists and turns, without any obstruction at all. How could this be explained? The second concern was that this area was close to the Whitehead Mountain. Strictly speaking, it was closer to the Dao League's mainland. It could even be said that it was the territory of the Dao League's mainland. If Swordsmanship directly said it or moved in this direction, he would definitely be stopped. Even if he had a good reason, they wouldn't let him pass. Thinking about it, once he touched the Dao League's territory and brought it out in the open, there would be many consequences. The first to bear the brunt of it would be the interests of the Feng and Yun clans' territories. With just the four of them, they might not have much confidence in protecting Swordsmanship and Swordsmanship. The Feng and Yun clans were big clans that had been standing for hundreds of thousands of years. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Who knew how many super experts were hidden inside? This was something that no one dared to say. Even if Swordsmanship said that he was confident in his safety, they would never agree to it. Therefore, Swordsmanship could only do it secretly. There was really no other way. Sorry. Because of this, the four people in the air spent a lot of effort to search the Whitehead Mountain. But they still didn't find anything. After a long while, the four people couldn't help but look at each other with worried expressions. Still haven't found them? Could they have left? That can't be right. Even if they really left, we should have found something. Anyway, there's no trace of them now. We can't even sense their presence. Cough, let's search again. We don't dare to go back like this. Even if we don't get scolded to death, we'll be beaten to death. The two tiger guards looked miserable. It can't be that serious, right? The sword guard was just carrying out his mission and didn't think too much. Haha. The tiger guard just laughed bitterly. Before we came, the king of Zwulu said something. What did he say? The sword guard was very curious. If anything happens to these two, you can kill yourselves over there. Your sister-in-law, and I will kill ourselves over here. The sword guard's face was full of shock. This is the first time the Heavenly King said something like this. We were so scared that we almost peed our pants. The pressure is huge. No, it's not just huge. The two sword guards were obviously shocked. It can't be right? Can't be. Hee. The real exaggeration is yet to come. The sword guard was speechless. Do you think there's only the four of us here? I'm not afraid to tell you, brother. Once we start fighting, a huge group of people will immediately come out of the void. I don't know about other things, but there are still 4 clouds above us that haven't left yet. It's just that they're quite far away. One of the tiger guards lowered his head and quietly pointed up with his finger. The sword guard was stunned. He only felt that his mouth was dry. So, is it really so important? So, you dare to leave now? I don't dare anymore. Continue searching. He's really my little ancestor. Sigh. Why did he go missing for no reason? What's going on? If something happens to him, many people will die. Sigh. Have you reported it? We've already reported it on our side. We've also reported it. That's good. Just as Yuni-chen said, it's not up to us to care about what happens in this matter. That's true. If the little ancestor comes out quickly, we can also retreat. It's really uncomfortable to be on tenterhooks like this. It's too uncomfortable. Isn't that so? Just as the sword guard and the tiger guard said, what happened at Mount Whitehead had already reached the ears of the higher-ups. However, how could this matter be hidden from the true higher-ups? The 7 swords of the Dao League already knew the whole story. They all came out of seclusion to discuss emergency countermeasures. All of them were frowning. Chapter 938. Last time, they had been blackmailed so much. This time, the situation was even more serious than last time. And the time was so close. They really didn't know what was going to happen. But it was definitely more serious than last time. Taoist Thunder was so angry that his face turned purple. What's going on? Are you rebelling? Taoist Thunder only felt powerless in his heart. You've already learned your lesson last time. Why are you doing this again this time? Can't you just stop for a while? This kind of master, this kind of future peak with unlimited potential. And he's in the alliance now. Even if you can't be friends, how valuable is a favor to him in the future? Do you really have to offend him? What kind of brains do your subordinates have? Taoist Thunder angrily scolded. He was really speechless now. Taoist Thunder's thinking was similar to the Flood Witches. He valued a person's future potential, and he valued the future, not the present. Although it wasn't as far-sighted as the Flood Witch thought, Taoist Thunder had his own way of thinking and cherished talents. He could also see Wuxia's potential. He could also see the danger in the future. Therefore, Taoist Thunder could not understand his brothers. Did they really have to offend such a person? Even during the Great Magi Demon War, or the Great War of the Nine Clans, some of the other party's higher-ups often cherished talents. Or sometimes some good karma could be formed. Don't underestimate this little bit of good karma. With the accumulation of karma, it could become a life-saving straw in the future. This was absolutely not an exaggeration. Most of the so-called karma came from this. If it was between brothers and friends, you saved my life, and I saved yours. This couldn't even be considered karma. Only between strangers or enemies, karma would be extremely strong. Karma Fengyan. The two of you have the most karma, but how many good karma and good karma are there? The calamity is coming. Don't you think about karma? Taoist Thunder said angrily. You even let your family get involved? What are you two thinking? Feng and Yun both lowered their heads. Now they really didn't have the mood to say anything. He could only feel the dejection in his heart coming in waves. Those four little bastards had concealed this matter too well. If he had spoken to his family earlier, he would have either given up on the operation and done the other party a favor. Otherwise, he would have mobilized the peak experts to solve the problem once and for all. The evil consequence of extinction. No matter which path he chose, it was the best choice. This opportunity could even be said to be the biggest opportunity to kill both Swordsmanship and Swordsmanship. As long as the situation was set in stone, the so-called future troubles would be easy to deal with. So what if it was the heaven-inspecting throne? Could it be that when the Demon Alliance was about to return, and the Umno Alliance's army was pressing on the border, they would directly engage in a life-and-death battle with their allies? These were all things that could be predicted. But now, the situation was difficult to resolve. No matter how he dealt with it, it would be wrong and he would be implicated. You guys should be prepared to hand over the people who did it. I don't think these people can be saved. Taoist Thunder sighed and said. Also try your best to prepare a sincere apology, minimizing the animosity between them to the minimum. Brothers, now is really not the time for internal strife. The Umno Alliance is about to cooperate sincerely, and we're still having internal strife. That's ridiculous. Taoist Feng and Taoist Yun heard this, and felt that Taoist Thunder's words made sense. They also felt a little regretful about this matter. But speaking of compensation, they were instantly unhappy. They had already compensated the last time, and now they had to compensate again. When did the Tao League become so weak? But they didn't say anything even though they felt indignant. After all, the people listed on the favor writ were approved by them, and had their signatures. They couldn't deny it. Now they could only wait, and see how far the astral souls would open their mouths this time. They'd better not go overboard. That to the Tao League's surprise, not only did the astral souls not open their mouths, they didn't even ask for anything. Or rather, there was no movement at all. The Tiger Guard reported the situation to the King of Zwolu, and the King of Zwolu informed the Heavenly King of the Right. The Heavenly King of the Right had no choice but to find his father and report the whole story. After hearing all this, the star-plucking emperor felt his head swell. Why was this little bastard being targeted again? The Tao League was courting death. The aftermath of the previous incident had yet to subside. He had no choice but to use a special communication method to send a message to the heaven-inspecting minister couple who were still in seclusion. The couple was recuperating in seclusion. Of course, he didn't want to disturb them if possible. But he had to inform them about this matter. He had nothing to say if he disturbed their seclusion. If he didn't inform them, the star-plucking emperor felt that his fate would be worse than the Tao League's when they came out of seclusion, that it was very unfortunate. When the message was sent, Zhuo Chonglu was in a critical moment. He forgot about everything and didn't see it. The person who saw the message was Zhuo Xiao's mother. One of them had to be awake while the other was in seclusion. They couldn't forget everything. Of course, they had to be vigilant at the very least. Wu Yuding exploded on the spot when she received the message. "You're courting death." The star-plucking emperor became more and more nervous when he found out that the person on the other end of the line was Wu Yuding. "Sister-in-law, what do you think we should ask the Tao League for?" Cough cough. "Price. What do you want?" "I don't want anything this time," Wu Yuding said murderously. "Don't worry about this." "Then what do you plan to do?" The star-plucking emperor had an ominous feeling. "We can't get out, but there are still arbitrators, right? The flood, which is the one who made the human favor order, and the arbitrator. She can't possibly eat shit every day, right?" Wu Yuding cut off the call without hesitation. The star-plucking emperor didn't feel at ease after cutting off the call. Instead, he was alarmed. This crazy woman. What was she trying to do? Yes, the flood, which was the one who made the human favor order, and was also the arbitrator. She was also the most impartial person. However, this was an internal matter of the astral souls. Would she interfere? Besides, would the flood witch ignore him if he asked her to deal with it? Would she pretend not to know anything and just watch the show? After all, the astral souls and the Tao League were having an internal conflict. The flood should be happy to see this, right? On the other side, Wu Yuding grabbed Zhuo Chonglu's phone and plugged it in. Then, she waved it in front of Zhuo Chonglu's face and unlocked it. Then, she searched for a while. She found the name Da Hong in the contact list and dialed it. However, no one picked up after waiting for a long time. Wu Yuding was quick-witted and realized that Da Hong was most likely in seclusion. Wu Yuding flew into a rage. Why was he still in seclusion at a time like this? She directly used her natal divine soul and activated the soul-shaking technique according to the guidance of her divine soul. With a soft puff, her divine soul suddenly shook. A trace of blood flowed out of Wu Yuding's nose. "Come out and do your work. Did I wear mourning clothes for you for nothing?" In the distant Umno Alliance's main hall flood palace. The flood which was cultivating with her eyes closed. He had already figured out the new cultivation path of soul splitting and body severing. At this moment, he already felt that he was on a wide, boundless, and unprecedentedly correct path that he had never dreamed of before. Therefore, he was in an exceptionally good mood. He vaguely felt that he seemed to have embarked on the orthodox path of cultivation, the severing three corpses. This was a path that even the ancestral sorcerers had never taken before. This was because the divine soul and body of the Umno Alliance members were not suitable for this path. This was also the reason why the Umno Alliance suffered heavy casualties during the Great War of the Liches and Demons. Because the other party definitely had a severing self somewhere else, they might not necessarily die. However, Zhu Wu of the Umno Alliance only had one life. This was too disadvantageous. No matter how strong one's combat power was, death was death. However, the other party could use severing corpses to resurrect and recover. This was the most unreasonable thing that the Umno Alliance felt during the Great War of the Nine Clans. However, there was no other way. Being unable to cultivate was the most helpless thing. Now, the flood which had actually figured it out himself. He couldn't help but feel grateful that his godsons and goddaughters had taken one to make up for it. This was luck. This was what it meant to be lucky. However, there were also some things that were not satisfactory. The sea of fate that was severed was not normal, not constant, and not very honest. Suddenly, with a whoosh, the sea of fate would be drawn out, and suddenly, it would be poured in. This made the flood which a little irritated. Sometimes, the sea of fate would be drawn out directly, and sometimes, It would be filled to the brim. However, between the drawing and pouring of the sea of fate, the flood which was caught off guard at the beginning, and slowly groped for a strange feeling. That was fate could be played like this? Then, what was the basis of this operation? The flood which became more and more diligent in his research. He was a focused person. Once he was interested in something, he would begin to devote himself wholeheartedly. First, he would keep increasing the volume, and then look at the pattern. As long as I am infinitely big, you will not be able to draw out the sea of fate, and you will not be able to fill it up. And the spiritual space of the sea of fate that I sever will keep increasing. Damn, isn't this constantly cultivating severing corpses? There is heavenly fate, and my own divine soul and consciousness. When it grows to a certain extent, it will produce a real divine soul and consciousness. Then, I can immediately sever it out. This was simply a genius idea. The flood which felt that he had found a way to grow stronger again, and couldn't help but feel more delighted. On this day, he was still concentrating on his research. Suddenly, he felt his head explode, and his messy hair suddenly floated up. With a bang, he stood up from his meditation. It was as if someone had poured ice water on him while he was sleeping soundly. He couldn't help but be surprised and angry. Soul-shaking technique. Who is this? It was simply a bastard. The flood which was almost mad with anger. This was the easiest way to go crazy. Who was this lunatic? Risking his own risk of going crazy, he used the soul-shaking technique on me? Who? Chapter 939. Then the great flood which felt that he had received a message in his soul. Flood, the rules you set are like farts. Your godson and godson are being hunted down by the Tao League. 5 Skysore Realm experts were dispatched the first time, and 10 the second time. Aren't you the one who upholds justice? Where is the justice you uphold? Could it be that the flood witch's so-called upholding justice is just like farts? Back then in Phoenix City, you were an old bachelor who had no one to bury you after you died. My Xiao Duo wore mourning clothes for you, and sent you off when you were old, so that you could live a complete life. You just watch as my son is bullied? You ungrateful thing. If I acknowledge you as my godfather, I will be bullied and assassinated every day. What's the use? I might as well acknowledge a dog as my godfather. Anyway, I can't get out. That's still your godson, and someone has violated the rules you set. You're still the arbiter, so I want to see how you're going to arbiter. Flood, you still have some use as a godfather. If you really can't do it, and the token of favor is useless, you might as well kill everyone up there except for my son and daughter. You're still the world's #1 expert after being slapped in the face? What the hell? Don't call yourself Flood, call yourself Coward Hong. Wu Yuding threw a tantrum, but before the flood witch could reply she said, Humph. Then there was no sound at all. The flood witch's scalp was numb from the scolding, and her eyelids kept twitching. It took her a long time to recover. This is the first time in my life that I've been scolded like this. I haven't even vented my anger yet, but I've already been scolded to my face. What the hell is this? Furthermore, I really can't vent my anger, so I have to hold it back. Although I can't tell if it's a man or a woman from the message, from the tone. It's obvious that it's impossible for anyone else to be it apart from Zhua's wife. Firstly, they don't have the ability, and secondly, they don't have the guts. The flood witch's face instantly darkened. He didn't need to look at anything else, or even ask, to know that this was absolutely true. Since the Zhua couple couldn't do anything now, it was obvious that they had to settle this matter themselves. And it had to be a solution that satisfied the Zhua couple. The flood witch couldn't help but feel depressed. What was depressing wasn't the fact that he had to do it himself, but that Zhua didn't want to do it himself. Instead, he asked his wife to arrange it for him. Surnamed Zhua, you can still be a little promising. If Zhua came looking for him, the flood witch smiled bitterly. That Zhua guy would never come to her. That guy was actually very arrogant. But now that his wife was looking for him, he felt a little uncomfortable. Can't we talk nicely? Do you have to scold me? What did he mean by it was better to recognize a dog than to recognize me as a godfather? Do you know how to speak? How should I put it? If this had happened to any of the geniuses on the token of favor, the flood witch would have immediately held them accountable and severely punished them. because the token of favor was indeed brought up by the Flood Witch from the beginning, and the Flood Witch had always been in charge of it. She used her invincible prestige and strength to preside over the fairness of the token of favor. Since the return of the Umno Alliance, the Flood Witch had already realized that the combined strength of the three continents was more than one level weaker than during the 100 Races struggle. Their combat strength was far from reaching the top level. Back then, Donghuang Demon Emperor, 12 Zhu Wu, 3 Pure Ones for Paths, and Almighty Beings. What a golden age! The current strength compared to the past could only be described with one word: haha. The Flood Witch was the person at the peak of her goal. How could she not be anxious? Of course, she had to think of a way. And this token of favor was the means by which the Flood Witch worked hard to construct the pinnacle of the continent's martial strength to advance further. There had to be a large number of talented pinnacle experts emerging, and after experiencing fierce battles, they had to stand out and soar to the 9 heavens. Only through countless life and death battles of equal strength could an expert comprehend a higher level of cultivation in the shortest amount of time. The art of raising gu was imperative. It was also the easiest way for experts to stand out. Since the appearance of the token of favor, of course, there had been cases where the Umno Alliance tried to assassinate the geniuses of the Astral Souls continent. When the Flood Witch found out, she personally rushed over and stopped it. She even gave a large sum of compensation and severely punished the person involved. The Astral Souls continent had also sent out fairies to assassinate the geniuses of the Umno Alliance. However, when the Flood Witch found out, she personally took action and killed the fairies. She even attacked the Devil Dao Patriarch, Lei Changtian, who was in charge of this matter, causing Lei Changtian to be seriously injured. Until now he had not appeared. In fact, the source of the Sky Patrol Minister couple's hatred towards the Flood, which originated from this. Because Wu Yuding's other identity was the only daughter of the Devil Dao Patriarch, Lei Changtian. The Flood Witch had beaten her father to the point where he had not shown his face for thousands of years. It would be strange if the daughter had any face for you. If not for her confidence in her father, knowing that the old man would never die, and that they could still contact each other, Wu Yuding would have already fought the Flood Witch to the death. Now Wu Yuding's intention was very obvious. Aren't you very capable? Aren't you awesome? Aren't you known for upholding justice? Aren't you the person in charge of the token of favor? Aren't you ruthless towards my father because of this? Aren't you supposed to be awesome? Now there's a chance to destroy it. Moreover, it's twice in a short period of time. Moreover, the assassination target is your godson and godson. This old lady wants to see how you deal with it. Let's wait and see. This time, if you don't handle it well, this old lady will start to settle the score. I don't care what token of favor or gu raising. I will directly kill all the people on the token of favor. Who asked you to raise birds? Needless to say, the Great Witch of the Flood could feel the threat. The Flood Witch's face darkened as she walked out with mountainous steps. Her face was full of anger. Fuck. This old lady has been threatened. This old lady has been slapped in the face. This old lady has been scolded. The Dao League really deserves to die. Seeing the Flood Witch walk out with a gloomy expression, as if before a storm, the people from Flood Palace were so scared that they almost couldn't walk. What was going on? Her aura was too scary. The Flood Witch took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed her anger. Then she ordered, "The Dao League has tried to assassinate the people on the token of favor twice. Investigate it thoroughly." There was no need to investigate this matter at all. There was already detailed evidence. In less than 2 minutes, the information of the person who made the move, the video of the attack, and even the most recent video were all sent over. The Flood Witch held the phone with her big hand. Her carrot-like fingers flicked here and there. The more she saw, the angrier she became. The first time was obviously ordered by 7 Swords. They actually started planning after Crown Prince's Academy. This is clearly looking down on me. When Zhua proposed to join the token of favor at Crown Prince's Academy, I was there. The people from the Dao League were also there. They actually made a move immediately. What a bastard. For such a big matter, they only asked for 100 drops of 9 Heavens Spirit Spring water. That Guy is such a coward. He's always so overcautious. If he doesn't target your descendants, who else can he target? Your wife has the nerve to call me a coward. Why didn't she say anything when you're such a coward? The second matter was done by the juniors of the Tao League. It was a change of fate. However, if the Tao League hadn't been instilling such thoughts in the Tao League, why would the juniors of the Tao League do it? How dare they do it? At the end of the day, it's still the higher-ups of the Tao League who broke the token of favor. If they don't punish them, is there still a need for the token of favor to exist in the future? The Flood Witch quickly found a reason to attack the higher-ups of the Tao League. They broke the rules twice in such a short period of time. Damn it! They're looking down on me. The Flood Witch was seething with anger. The Flood Witch wouldn't be so angry if it was someone else. However, it was Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian. This was even more unbearable. The Flood Witch asked herself honestly. This had nothing to do with her godsons or goddaughters. The Flood Witch felt that she didn't have any godfather or godson feelings towards Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian. At most, she had a little friendship with Zhuo Xiaoduo. It wasn't a very strong kind. It was far from the point where she would treat him as a precious treasure. How could she treat Zhuo's son as a precious treasure? This was absolutely impossible. It was impossible even if she was crazy. However, the current situation was that Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian were indeed the Flood Witch's precious treasures. However, this was another reason. It had to do with cultivation. These two guys might not know it yet, but one of them slapped her, and the other forced her to drink. Both of them were related to her. She couldn't do without either one of them. Right now, they were the key to the future of the Tao that she had studied. The actions of those bastards in the Tao League could be said to be cutting off her path forward. Of course, this was only one of the reasons. The Flood Witch was even more certain about one thing. Since the last time they met, he had suppressed his cultivation base to fight with Zhuo Xiaoduo. The Great Flood Shaman clearly understood that with Zhuo Xiaoduo's talent and combat strength, as long as Zhuo Xiaoduo grew up, Zhuo Xiaoduo's achievements would be above him. When that time came, she would be suppressed by Zhuo Xiaoduo and would not be able to defeat him. There was even a considerable possibility that she would die in the hands of Zhuo Xiaoduo. For others, this was a hidden danger, a threat. The correct operation would eliminate the hidden danger at the budding stage. However, for the Flood Witch, such an opponent who could make her feel death at any time was something she had been looking forward to for countless years. This was the Flood Witch's true hope. All of her future, all of her hopes of becoming as strong as Zhu Wu, and her lifelong wish of becoming a strong person in the starry sky, were all on this. There was no one in the 3 continents who could give her this kind of pressure. Therefore, at the Flood Witch's place, it would be fine even if everyone in the world died. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo could not die. If Zhuo Xiaoduo could not die, then Zhuo Xiaonian could not die either. It was that simple. It had absolutely nothing to do with feelings. The Flood Witch was still very confident about this. What feelings could I have for this little bastard? It did not exist. Chapter 940. Including the Sky Surveyor throne, who was destined to advance by leaps and bounds. The Flood Witch was sure that after this guy broke through, he would be on par with her. At most, fighting for a few days and nights without a clear winner. It was impossible for him to give her more pressure. What pressure can that Zhuo guy give me? If it wasn't for my good luck and having a good son, that son is still half mine. What's there to be proud of? The Flood Witch knew in her heart that without greater pressure, her progress would be very, very slow. It would even be impossible for her to make much progress. Therefore, the Flood Witch was now hoping that the people of the Demon Alliance would return quickly. On the other hand, she hoped that Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian would grow as soon as possible and be able to pose a threat to her. The greater the threat, the better. It would be even better if they could threaten her life. The Flood Witch was very clear about the combat strength of the Demon Clan. With her current cultivation, it would be a big joke to say that she was the best in the world. Among the Demon Clan, those who were stronger than her could not even be counted with 2 hands. As for the stronger Demon Emperor Donghuang, the Demon Master, the Demon Commander, and the 4 Divine Beasts, none of them were comparable to her. Once the Demon Alliance returned, there would be no more Great Tao comprehension. With the current strength of the Astral Souls, the Umno Alliance, the Tao League, and the strength of the 3 continents, if they really faced the Demon Alliance, the result could only be described with 4 words: crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It was the Demon Alliance that was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. As for himself, there was a 100% chance that he would fall in that battle. There was no doubt about that. The Flood Witch wanted the Great Tao not to fall. That was a difference in essence. Once Zhou Xiaoduo grew, there would be a considerable chance that she would reach the level of Zhu Wu. If she could reach the level of Zhu Wu, she would have the power to fight. But before reaching such a level, if she encountered the higher-ups of the Demon Alliance, she would only die. There was no luck, because she could not escape. His speed was definitely not as fast as those from the Demon Alliance who could fly at birth. Therefore, no matter what, everyone in the continent could die except for Zhou Xiaoduo. This was the Flood Witch's bottom line. However, the Tao League had violated this bottom line twice in a short period of time. Twice. After the first warning, there was a second one. If I don't make a move, are you going to do it a third time? Until he kills Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaonian? It was simply unbearable. The Flood Witch stood up and said angrily, "Bastard." The wrath of a great shaman was earth-shattering. But what made the Flood Witch even angrier was that Wu Yuding was clearly using her as a tool, and she had no choice but to go. This was what pissed him off the most. Moreover, the other side was scolding him, as if he was scolding his subordinates. This made him even more displeased. Am I someone you can order around? Even if the 2 of you work together, you can't command me. You're not qualified. But, now regardless of whether you're qualified or not, you have to take care of this matter. You have to take care of it to the end. Naturally, your anger turned into frustration. Do I have to go just because you say so? Damn, I really have to go. This is so fucking bad. In the end, all these accumulated negative emotions landed on the Tao League. It's these bastards who brought me such trouble. Can't they just abide by the rules? If they don't abide by the rules, what's the use of the rules? I set the rules, I proposed the token of gratitude. I was monitoring, I was in charge. In the end, you slapped me in the face. You broke the rules. That's why that woman scolded me in my face. I still have to work for her. I still have to clean up the mess for you guys who break the rules. Do you think I, the Great Flood Witch, have no sense of shame? I'm so angry. Holding the 1,000 Souls Nightmare Hammer, Great Flood Witch leaped forward and floated out. If she didn't use this matter to teach those people in the Tao League a lesson, there would be no need for the token of gratitude to exist in the future. The wind and clouds rose. The Flood Witch soared into the sky. Her target was the Tao League headquarters. The more she went, the angrier she became. It's so fucking far. Don't you know that I'm still in seclusion? Tao League mainland. Yun Shangsong led a few of his guards and headed towards the Sanqing Holy Mountain. With the cultivation level of him and his guards, they could fly in the air long ago. They could reach their destination in the blink of an eye. But Yun Shangsong had a special liking for riding horses since he was young. He knew that it was far away, but he still enjoyed it. This also created a unique scene in the Tao League. When everyone was driving high-end cars or flying in the sky, a team of 9 people would often appear, galloping and speeding. And these 9 people could only be Yun Shangsong and his 8 great guards. In the beginning, there were people who pointed and said, "Look at these 9 idiots." But later no one dared to say that. Why? Because Yun Shangsong was one of the 10 heavenly kings under the Tao League's 7 swords. Even in the 3 continents, he was one of the top powerhouses. Yun Shangsong was a great cultivator from the same generation as the Sky Patrol Minister. He was the #1 genius in the Tao League back then. He was also the #1 person in the Tao League who was on the human token for the first time. This person grew rapidly, and his cultivation level soared. Today, he had already become one of the 10 heavenly kings under the Tao League's 7 swords, the Blood Sword Heavenly King. The only thing that made the Tao League's 7 swords regretful was that Yun Shangsong was still unable to reach the level of the Sky Patrol Minister and the Imperial Lord Jiaxing. It was a little imperfect. However, this did not affect Yun Shangsong's almost supreme status in the Dao League. Yun Shangsong's expression was even more melancholic as he rode the precious horse that had become a legend during the dynasty's struggle for hegemony. This horse had been ridden by him for generations. He had ridden it for many generations, that as for the 8 guards behind him, each of them had a horse, and were galloping at full speed, that not everyone liked to ride a horse. Riding a horse was not something that was high and mighty. Moreover, riding a horse through a busy city in modern society made people feel that it was quite stupid. To be honest, none of Yun Shangsong's subordinates really liked riding a horse. However, what could they do? No matter how much they disliked or were unwilling to ride a horse, they had to ride a horse, that they couldn't possibly let their boss ride a horse below while the 8 of them flew in the sky, right? Many times, they even had to pretend that they liked and were happy to ride a horse as a means of transportation. After all, being able to follow Yun Shangsong and become his guard was already an achievement in itself. It was a kind of glory. If one was unwilling or disliked it, there would naturally be a lot of latecomers who were willing to take their place. Compared to becoming Yun Shangsong's guard, sacrificing a bit of personal hobbies and cultivating a relatively different personal hobbies was really nothing. Everyone knew how to choose. It's said that during the era of the dynasty, those legendary great generals galloped on their horses like this. They trampled over the rivers and mountains, bathed in blood, and finally achieved immortal achievements. Yun Shangsong was a little emotional. He waved his whip and pointed forward. However, since the return of the Dao League, that scene of thousands of horses galloping on their horses has become a legend. What a pity. Boss, did you return to the Sanqing Holy Mountain this time for something important? One of the guards behind him asked. I don't know. Yun Shangsong's eyes were full of fatigue. However, the Dao League's army has been assembled. They need someone to lead them to the Sun Moon Pass to lead the army into battle, or to guard the Sun Moon Pass. That should be one of the reasons. Then could there be another reason? It's said that the younger generation activated the flying heavens and assassinated the esteemed master of the human favor token. Yun Shangsong's face revealed a hint of mockery. At this moment, there's a huge uproar in the 3 continents. This should be one of the reasons. Behind him, the 8 guards were speechless. Killing the master of the token of gratitude. What's the big deal? The corners of Yun Shangsong's mouth curled up tiredly and mockingly. Back then, the flood which had nothing to do, so she created this token of gratitude. This time, I'm very interested to see how the flood which will deal with it. If I can see the so-called invincible person come out to smooth things over, it'll be a good viewing pleasure. Even if they're trying to smooth things over, our Dao League will probably bleed a little this time. One of the guards said, bleeding is certain, but it shouldn't be to the extent of hurting the bones and tendons. Yun Shangsong said indifferently, the Demon League is about to return en masse. This is something that the 3 continents have confirmed. In other words, the 3 continents are in a critical period of life and death. I believe that even the flood which will not rashly cause too much trouble at this time. That's why I said that this will be a rare gift to smooth things over. Peerless experts have now transformed into treasures that the 3 continents can't afford to lose. Yun Shangsong laughed mockingly. Compensating some wealth and treasures. That's all. At this moment a faint voice said, the 3 continents can't afford to lose peerless experts? Who said that? An earth-shattering aura suddenly rushed towards them. In an instant, the 9 horses whined in unison, and all fell to the ground. Yun Shangsong looked over and saw a figure standing at the entrance of the 3 pure divine mountain path in front of him. He stood with his hands behind his back. That person was tall and sturdy, wearing a green robe. His messy hair fluttered in the wind. The wind blew, and his clothes fluttered. He just stood there, at the foot of the mountain, giving Yun Shangsong and the others the feeling that he was taller and more majestic than the 3 pure divine mountain. He was just standing there, stepping on flat ground. But he gave people the feeling that he was stepping on the starry sky, ascending to the 9 heavens, overbearing and domineering. Everything in the world, including the mountains and rivers or the endless peaks, could only be overlooked by him. Yin Shangsong took a deep breath, and his expression changed. He straightened his body and bowed. So it's Senior Flood who has come. The Tao League has not welcomed you. But I wonder what Senior Flood has come to the Three Pure Divine Mountain for? When the 8 guards behind Yin Shangsong heard this, they all turned pale with fright. Their eyes were filled with panic. The Flood Witch had come in person. They were just talking and laughing, and now they saw her. For a moment, everyone had a bad feeling. Chapter 941. The person at the foot of the Sanqing Sacred Mountain was, of course, the Flood Witch. The Flood Witch stood there. Her expression didn't change, but she was so angry that her stomach was about to explode, especially when she heard Yin Shangsong say that the Demon League was about to return en masse. This was already confirmed by the 3 continents. In other words, the 3 continents were in a critical period of life and death. Even the Flood Witch wouldn't dare to rashly stir up too much trouble at this time. The peerless experts had now transformed into treasures that the 3 continents couldn't afford to lose. The Flood Witch felt that she suddenly seemed to understand why the people of the Tao League dared to be so brazen and do such things that trampled on the rules one after another. What the hell? You guys are actually thinking that, just as Yin Shangsong said. This was a sensitive period. This sentence was absolutely correct. The Demon League was about to return. Because of its overall strength, the higher-ups of the 3 continents were under unprecedented pressure. This was also the truth. Now, even if the peerless experts of the 3 continents didn't lose a single one, they might not be able to survive against the Demon League. Killing the peerless experts at this time was no different from seeking their own deaths and destroying their own city walls. Therefore, no matter how the Tao League trampled on the rules and broke the agreement, as long as you still had the heart to consider the big picture, you couldn't go too far. They were sure that even if she came out as an arbitrator, she wouldn't go too far. Just as Yin Shangsong said, compensate with some heavenly treasures, that's all. If that was all, the Flood Witch might suppress her anger and ask 7 Swords what to do about this matter. First be polite, then use force. But Yin Shangsong said, if I could see the so-called invincible person come out to smooth things over, it would be a good visual and audio enjoyment. This sentence caused the great magus of the Flood to explode in anger. Fuck your ancestors. I actually became an actor and became your visual and audio enjoyment? Then I'll let you enjoy it. The Flood Witch had rushed all the way here with the intention of going straight to the 3 pure temples. However, she accidentally bumped into Yin Shangsong and the others. Furthermore, when she heard this sentence, how could she endure it any longer? With a whoosh, she descended. What the Flood Witch really cares about is that Yin Shangsong is the only one who has this idea. Or did the higher-ups of the Tao League have similar thoughts? If it was the latter, then the matter would be extremely serious. The Flood Witch stood with her hands behind her back and looked at the 9 people in front of her. Her eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning as they shone on Yin Shangsong's face. She said lightly, you just said that the Demon League is about to return. It's fine to break some rules at such a sensitive time. Am I right? Am I right? Yin Shangsong was suddenly in a difficult position. He felt that his face was hurting from the Flood Witch's stare, as if it was burning. This sentence was indeed said by him. There was no way to refute it. If it was someone else here, even if it was the left and right Heavenly King, Emperor Zhaixing, or the other great wizards of the Umno Alliance, Yin Shangsong would have his own countermeasures. He could deal with it either by coercion or by persuasion. However, it was unusual for the Flood Witch to ask this question herself. How should he answer this question? Even an idiot could see and hear that the Flood Witch was angry at this moment. She was very, very angry. Yin Shangsong took a deep breath and said softly, Senior Flood, you're right. I said this sentence. Now that the general situation is declining, the Demon League is about to return. It's really the autumn of life and death for the 3 continents. Senior Flood, we should put the overall situation first. I don't think there's anything wrong with this sentence. Even if you ask me face to face, I still think so. And I still have to say so. He suddenly raised his head. His face was full of passion. He said in a deep voice, Even if the Tao League is going to suffer some losses now, we will still put the overall situation first. Now that the Demon League is about to return, everyone in the 3 continents is in danger. For the 3 continents, for the people in the world, it's only right for one person to suffer a little grievance. What's there to not bear? The Flood Witch smiled faintly. Well said. Every word is reasonable. So, the Tao League has chosen to let me suffer this grievance? That. Yin Xiangsong suddenly choked. Then he was dumbfounded and speechless for a long time. Why did this sentence suddenly come to this place? That's not what I meant. What I meant was, in the face of righteousness, it's okay for the astral souls to suffer a little grievance. Why did it become the Flood Witch to suffer this grievance? What's the meaning of this? And how should he answer this sentence? Yin Xiangsong thought about it carefully. This unforeseen event not only involved the people of Xinghan, but also broke the rules of the token of personal favor set by the Great Witch Hong Shui twice. If it was said that the Great Witch Hong Shui was wronged, it seemed that it really made sense. At this moment, Yin Xiangsong couldn't help but shout in his heart. He instantly knew where the problem was. At this moment, his greatest wish was to swallow all the words he had said before back into his stomach, without missing a single word. Those words, every sentence, every word, were like slaps to the Flood Witch's face. Moreover, he was occupying the height of morality, and using the people in the world as the foundation to suppress the Flood, which in the name of the highest authority. The Flood Witch put her hands behind her back and said faintly, "You're wrong. You're all wrong. The people in the world have never been in my consideration. I, the Flood Witch, have never considered the life and death of the 3 continents. Didn't I say that the world belongs to the people in the world? What does it have to do with me?" The Flood Witch showed a faint smile on her face. "What I need to consider is how to not break the rules I set. If they're broken, how can I investigate? As the maker of the debt of gratitude and the arbiter, I must be fair. At the same time, I need this authority, an authority that can't be challenged by anyone or any force. This is what I need to consider. Other things, such as the people in the world, the rise and fall of the continent, compared to the rules I set, in my opinion, my rules are more important. For the people in the world, you can do whatever you want, as long as you don't break my rules. But if you break my rules, no matter what your motive is, you can't do it, even if it's for the people in the world. Your great principles won't work on me." The Flood Witch paced with her hands behind her back, her expression getting colder and colder. "Your Tao League thinks that it's okay to offend me at such a delicate time when the Demon League is about to return? I have to make concessions for the big picture? Is that what you mean? Ha 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 ha. What a scheme, what a scheme." The Flood Witch laughed loudly, and her body suddenly soared into the air. Her messy hair also danced with unprecedented intensity. At this moment, the entire world seemed to be suddenly compressed and concentrated under the Flood Witch. She looked up to the sky and laughed. "Ha ha 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 ha. Today I'll tell you, even if it's for the people in the world, for the safety of the continent, the rules I set are still not a reason for you to break and trample on at will." With a long howl, the wind and clouds in the sky moved together. The world in all directions suddenly squeezed toward the center. A pair of sledgehammers appeared in the Flood Witch's hands. Thousand Souls' Nightmare Hammer, a peerless weapon that suppressed the 3 continents. "Everyone will kill geniuses." The Flood Witch laughed loudly. "Today watch me kill one too." She suddenly disappeared from the sky, and then appeared in front of Yin Xiangsong. This hammer, mixed with the mighty power of heaven and earth, wrapped in the clouds in all directions, as well as the mountains, rivers, sun, moon, and stars brazenly fell. The shrill sound of tearing space didn't sound until the moment the hammer's momentum passed. In midair, a hole in the gates of hell suddenly appeared. Countless ghosts and ghosts rushed out screaming and rushed into the Flood Witch's sledgehammers. This was the peak Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer that hadn't been presented to the human world for a long time. It carried the power of heaven and earth, the power of mountains and rivers, the power of the sun, moon, and stars, the power of wind, cloud, thunder, lightning, frost, rain, and snow, and the power of the 3 realms. It fell with a bang. "Senior, you misunderstand. Yun Shangsong's sword was released, and endless clouds and mist surged to meet it. He was still anxiously explaining on the side. At this moment, he clearly felt the aura of death assaulting him. And he clearly understood that his feet had already stepped into the gates of hell. Who was Yun Shangsong? He was a top expert who had already reached the peak of this world. He was a top expert in the Tao League, second only to the 7 swords of the Tao League. He had the right to be arrogant, and he had the right to speak nonsense. But the premise was that he wasn't facing the Flood Witch. Facing a furious and murderous the Flood Witch, no matter how conceited Yun Shangsong was, he knew that not only was he not a match for her, he didn't even have the possibility of escaping alive. Facing a top expert like the Flood Witch, if he wanted to escape, he would only be inviting his own defeat, walking on the path of death, and accelerating his own death. Yun Shangsong made the wisest choice. As he explained, he tried his best to parry, and at the same time he retreated. There was a loud bang, and Yun Shangsong screamed in pain. His long sword shattered inch by inch, and he coughed up blood that filled the sky. His body swayed as he was sent flying into the distance. At the same time, he shouted with all his might, "Help! Ah!" Puff! But he spat out another mouthful of blood. The Heavenly King of the Tao League was hit by the Flood Witch's hammer, with only one hammer. In fact, he was already seriously injured in less than one strike. However, this also proved another thing. Yun Shangsong really lived up to his reputation as a peerless genius in the Tao League. He was really able to survive under the Flood Witch's powerful attack. This strength was really amazing. When his 8 guards saw this scene, they all turned pale with fright. One after another, they opened their mouths and let out long cries to warn him. Then, they rushed forward to stop him without any regard for their lives. The Great Flood Witch laughed and didn't dodge. Instead, he used his hammers to casually collide with the attack. "If I want to kill you, can you still run?" Chapter 942. The Flood Witch casually slammed into them. Yes, she didn't even use her hammer. She just slammed into them. And the 8 guards were sent flying in 8 different directions with their bones broken. With a flash, the Flood Witch appeared in front of Yun Shangsong and slammed her hammer on his head again. Ghost howls sounded in the sky. Countless ferocious ghosts appeared in the sky, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they roared crazily. In the sky, the clouds gathered and scattered, and the sun and moon dimmed. "Senior, please spare my life," Yun Shangsong yelled with extreme horror and despair in his eyes. However, he also used all his strength to counterattack with all his might. Unfortunately, his counterattack was like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. He couldn't resist at all, and the Flood Witch's hammer smashed on his head. With a crisp thud, Yun Shangsong, the Heavenly King of Bloody Sword from the Tao League, disintegrated at a speed visible to the naked eye. His entire physical body collapsed instantly and didn't exist anymore. In the next moment, Yun Shangsong's primordial spirit was pulled out of his physical body. Then, millions of ferocious ghosts that appeared because of the 1,000 Souls nightmare hammer swarmed toward him and tried to devour him. "Stop!" An exasperated yell came from the sky. It was Taoist Yun's voice. The wind and clouds in the sky turned upside down with this yell. The Flood Witch sneered. Without turning her head, she slammed her hammer down casually. With a whimper, it sounded like thousands of ghosts were crying. "Who are you calling to stop?" Then his majestic body turned around, and his messy hair fluttered backward. With a buzz, the sky and earth shook again, and another hammer smashed down. "Who are you ordering to stop?" "Another hammer. Are you talking to me?" "Another hammer. Do you think that I don't dare to do it?" Boom. Another hammer. "Who thinks that I can't kill?" Boom. "Do I give you face?" Boom. "Are my rules not good enough?" Boom. "For all the living beings in the world." Boom. "For the safety of the continent." Boom. "Do you think that I can be wronged?" Boom. "Do I look like someone who is at a disadvantage?" Boom. Twice in a row. Boom. "You think it's safe?" Boom. "Flying heavens sabotage writ." Boom. "Breaking my rules." Boom. "I can't kill your geniuses." Boom. "How about I kill one of your heavenly kings today?" Boom. "You dare to assassinate me." At this point, the Flood Witch suddenly stopped talking. Then, she swung her hammer 3 times in succession. The rumbling sounds were incessant. All 7 of you are here? Does anyone else think I'm easy to bully? As the Flood Witch continued to hammer, the wind and clouds in the sky surged. Heaven and earth seemed to have returned to chaos. The pressure was unprecedented. Thousands of ghosts came out. The wind and clouds roared. The stars rotated. Black and white, they rotated back and forth. The entire world seemed like it was going to be smashed into pieces. Countless spaces revolved and danced along with the Flood Witch's twin hammers. The target of the first strike was Taoist Yin. When it came to the third strike, Taoist Yin and Taoist Yin had to block it together. When it came to the 18th strike, it was as if 18 levels of hell had appeared at the same time. The 7 swords of the Tao League had gathered and fought together. The Flood Witch didn't give anyone a chance to speak. She swung her hammer 20 times in one breath. Heaven and earth changed color. This wasn't just a description. It was the true meaning of heaven and earth changing color. The sun and moon lost their light. The Great Flood Witch originally wanted to hammer down 24 times. But the moment the last sentence came out of his mouth, his momentum suddenly dissipated, and he almost spilled the beans. She cursed in her heart. Therefore, she only swung her hammer 20 times. On the other side, 7 people stared at the Flood Witch with red faces. They wanted to eat her flesh. Who else could they be but the 7 swords of the Tao League? Taoist Yin and Taoist Feng's faces were as red as blood. They forcefully endured the surging qi and blood as they stared at the Flood Witch. However, they couldn't hold it in anymore. They opened their mouths and spat out a mouthful of blood, creating 2 deep bloody holes in the ground. Even Taoist Lei's face was red as he stared at the Flood Witch in shock. This bastard. This guy. He was much stronger than when he was at the Starlight Mountains. This was unbelievable. How long had it been? How could he improve so quickly? The Flood Witch was now truly the strongest person in the world. Even if that guy surnamed Zui appeared in the mortal world again, he most likely wouldn't be her match. Flood, Taoist Lei said furiously. Are you crazy? Looking at the broken pieces on the ground and the pitiful situation, where not even a fingernail-sized piece of flesh could be found, Taoist Lei almost went crazy. You killed Yin Shangsong. You actually killed Yin Shangsong? The Flood Witch smiled faintly. With a flip of her hands, the horrifying Thousand Souls nightmare hammer disappeared. She said indifferently, Why? Is there a problem? You can kill the genius on the human token, but I can't kill your heavenly king? Taoist Lei, try saying no to me. Do you dare? Taoist Lei's face was red as he stared at the Flood Witch fiercely. However, when the words no reached the tip of his tongue, he really didn't dare to say it out loud. They had fought for so many years. Few people knew the Flood Witch better than Taoist Lei. This guy was obviously still in a state of rage. It was obvious that he was still depressed. If he said no, the 3 pure holy mountain would be destroyed by him today. That's a misunderstanding. Taoist Feng said furiously. A misunderstanding. Do you understand? The Flood Witch narrowed her eyes and looked at Taoist Feng. Today is also a misunderstanding. Do you understand? Say something you don't understand. Taoist Feng held his breath and couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood. He was flustered and exasperated. Are you still being reasonable? No. What reason? The Flood Witch said. Do you have a problem with that? Taoist Feng was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed at the Flood Witch but couldn't say a word. He just kept gasping for breath. He really didn't know what to say. Are you being reasonable? If not, what reason? It was such a simple and straightforward sentence. But all of a sudden, it blocked all the subsequent words that could be said. It was done cleanly and cleanly. Taoist Lei took deep breaths. After a long time, he calmed down a little and said, Brother Hong, let's move to the main hall first. I'll explain it to you slowly. The Flood Witch said indifferently, There's no need to explain. I'm just here to ask a few questions. He rolled his eyes and asked word by word. Is the human token still there? Is the rule that I set still a rule? The Flood Witch stood there with an earth-shattering aura. She said slowly, Just these 2 questions. After I'm done, I'll leave. The human token is still there. Taoist Lei took a deep breath and said, "Rules are rules. If you break the rules, you'll be punished and pay the price." The Flood Witch nodded and said, "Then, are you satisfied with this price? Do you think it's enough?" She pointed casually, and the ground was full of blood and flesh. The faces of the 7 swords of the Tao League, which had just recovered a little, twitched again. Their eyelids kept twitching. This price. The fall of a heavenly king. The Flood Witch's meaning was very clear. This was the price. You broke the rules this time, and paid the price. If other continents break the rules in the future, you'll have to pay the same price. However, the price they had to pay was simply too heavy, too disastrous. It was so heavy that even a top force like the Tao League could not afford it. How many years, how many generations, how many battles, how much effort, how many opportunities, how much painstaking effort, how many painstaking efforts could give birth to a heavenly king? Since the return of the Tao League until now, it had been tens of thousands of years of accumulation. After tens of thousands of years, only 10 people had reached the heavenly king realm. And today, one of them was killed just like that. The Flood Witch said indifferently, "If you think that this price is not enough, then I can ask for more." Taoist Lei took a deep breath and almost sucked the air in front of him into a vacuum. He gritted his teeth and said, "This price is too much. As long as you're satisfied." The Flood Witch nodded and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Go ahead." 7 Swords gritted his teeth and said this. 2 words. The Flood Witch looked at Taoist Lei and was silent for a while. Suddenly she laughed and said, "Taoist Lei, you know very well who your target is. I don't want to say more. What I want to tell you is, Zhuozhangchang's current cultivation is not inferior to mine. Note that I'm talking about the current me, the current me." Taoist Lei suddenly raised his head, his face full of shock. Zhuozhangchang was the real name of the Sky Surveyor Minister. This name was very something. It was probably because of this reason that very few people in the 3 continents dared to call him by his name. At the same time, it was also the reason why the name of the Sky Surveyor Minister gradually evolved into the biggest secret of the 3 continents. As long as this name was called, it was equivalent to offending the Sky Surveyor Minister. And the Sky Surveyor Minister had always felt that his name was not very good. And the Lady of the Throne, she hated this name even more. Therefore, this name could be said to be a common taboo in the 3 continents. But the Flood Witch obviously did not care about this taboo, and said it out loud. Taoist Lei widened his eyes and said, He has already reached this level." The Great Flood Shaman's words just now contained far too much information. He said that the Sky Sentinel Throne's current strength wasn't inferior to his own. Furthermore, it was the current him who had just suppressed the 7 swords of the Tao Alliance. "So you're on your own now." The Flood Witch smiled faintly. Her body suddenly soared into the sky. The wind and clouds in the sky surged, and in all directions, thunder and lightning suddenly exploded. Then the sky suddenly stilled. The wind and clouds disappeared, and the scorching sun was in the sky. The sunlight spread over the earth. The wind and rain stopped, and the sun shone brightly. It was as if nothing had happened. On the ground, the grass swayed gently. In 8 directions, there were 8 severely unconscious people lying on the ground. The Blood-Sword Heavenly King, one of the 10 Heavenly Kings of the Tao League, had completely disappeared and no longer existed in this world. Chapter 943. The 7 swords of the Tao League had complicated expressions on their faces. Who would have thought that they would have to pay such a heavy price just to deal with Shuo and not kill him? A heavenly king had fallen because of this. What's more, this matter was only half over, because the astral soul's mainland, who were the victims, had yet to make a sound. They were still silent. No one would think that they would stop and put this matter aside. Taoist Master Thunder's face was completely gloomy. The other 6 people also had heavy expressions on their faces. That person's cultivation could still be on par with the Flood, which who had broken through to the next realm. This explosive news was like a huge mountain pressing down on them. It was heavy in their hearts. This matter had changed so much. It was really hard to say what direction it would take. Taoist Master Thunder felt a headache coming on. He looked at the others and felt that they had never felt so powerless in tens of thousands of years. Think about it yourselves. How should this matter end? It definitely won't end like this. Taoist Master Thunder's face was dark. The others also had dark faces. Taoist Master Rain suddenly frowned and said, "The flood which didn't finish her sentence just now. It's very intriguing." "What sentence?" "When the flood which smashed her hammer, her last sentence was, 'If you dare to assassinate me, fuck you.' These few words." Taoist Master Rain frowned and said, "Or some other pronunciation. What does that mean?" "If you dare to assassinate me, fuck you?" Taoist Master Cloud said with a dark face. "Could it be, 'If you dare to assassinate me, fuck you'?" She didn't finish. "Doesn't seem like it. This is a flat sound. 'If you dare to assassinate me, fuck you.'" The few of them stroked their beards and pondered, their brows tightly knitted. "What? Fuck you?" Taoist Master Thunder was furious. "The situation is already so urgent. Why are you all thinking about Flood's bullshit, instead of thinking about how to reorganize your clans?" Just those 5 words, profound words? The other 6 people's faces were covered in dirt from his scolding. They looked embarrassed and couldn't argue. But when they thought about it carefully, they realized that it was useless to think about it. Especially the Feng and Yin clan. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Taoist Thunder said angrily. "Are you going to destroy a few more of our heavenly kings for the sake of your juniors? There's definitely something wrong with your usual education." Taoist Yin's face darkened with rage. Looking at the scattered flesh and blood, looking at the 8 guards who were slowly waking up, he only felt pain in his heart. This heavenly king was from the Yin family. He could be said to be the rising star of the Yin family, an existence akin to the stabilizing force of the sea. Now he had died just like that. It was too unjust. Keep an eye on your own family. If something like this happens again in the future, let your family's heavenly king accept the punishment and die. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Don't implicate unrelated people. Taoist Thunder said harshly with a dark face. He didn't say anything else and just left. The others also left. One by one, they scattered like flowing stars and clouds, quickly rushing back to their respective families. This time, they had to go back and give an explanation. Otherwise, if something like this happened again, they would have to hand over a heavenly king to apologize. How many heavenly kings did a family have? There were 2 clans with the best luck, while the rest only had 1. Perhaps there were 1 or 2 more heavenly king realm cultivators. However, to reach the heavenly king realm, one's cultivation level was not the only thing that mattered. This kind of mistake could not be made again no matter what. At the scene, only Feng and Yin were left. The 2 of them looked at each other with dismay written all over their faces. They really thought that the flood which would not be so angry at a time like this. But they never thought that the rebound this time would be so huge. It was so overwhelming. It was so hysterical. It was as if their bottom line had been directly touched. They immediately counterattacked. Extreme counterattack. That if they had known this would happen, they would not have done it in the first place. Lunatic. Taoist Feng looked up to the sky and sighed. Taoist Yin's face was dark, and his heart was bleeding. He took out a spirit pill and fed it to the 8 guards. "How is it?" "It's the same. Anyone who is injured by the 1,000 Souls Nightmare Hammer, their foundation is destroyed, their origin is damaged, and their martial path is hopeless. Unless they can find a heart of stars and heal them." Taoist Yin's face was dark. But these injuries were caused by the Flood Witch's full strength. Even a heart of stars may not be able to heal them. Only a heart of stars of the highest quality can hope to heal them. Taoist Feng was silent. If that was the case, these 8 people were basically crippled. The guards of a heavenly king were not ordinary experts. Most of them were personal subordinates left behind by the heavenly king during the process of his rise. Every one of them was a true expert. The guards of a heavenly king were at the Tao integration realm. Occasionally, there would be Skysoar cultivators among them, but apart from being at the peak of the Skysoar realm, they had to be geniuses who had suppressed their cultivation at least 8 times when they were in the returning to profound realm. In fact, they would definitely be able to break through to the Tao integration realm in the future. Only then were they qualified to be in such a position. In other words, most of the guards of a heavenly king were qualified to compete for the position of heavenly king in the future. Perhaps one day they would stand out. But now, 8 of them were crippled. Although such a loss could not compare to the loss of a true heavenly king, it was still too great a loss, and was extremely painful. I'll take them back to the Yun clan. Taoist Yun's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. There's something fishy about this matter. Have we been used by someone? The 2 of them, together with the 8 seriously injured guards, rushed towards the white-haired mountain, whistling through the wind and clouds. That at this moment, the higher-ups of the Feng and Yun clans were gathered together to discuss countermeasures. The news of the Flood Witch's display of invincible might had yet to spread to them. Everyone was worried. Yun Pialiu and the other 3 were all geniuses of their clans, rising stars of the younger generation. But now, they were all lying there on the verge of death unconscious. The injuries on their bodies were worsening, festering and decaying bit by bit. Everyone had already thought of all ways and means. Even the Saint Soul water that could purify the soul, and the 9 heaven spirit spring that was said to be able to purify all filth, could only alleviate the symptoms temporarily. After a short period of time, they started to rot again. By now, the skin and flesh of these 4 people were almost completely rotten. Their faces were full of holes, their bodies, legs, arms. As for their lower body, there was no need to mention it. The lump hanging there was long gone, and on top of the that at the back, there was another that at the front. After much consideration, everyone chose to use the 9 heaven spirit spring water to rub on their bodies bit by bit. Finally, they managed to protect their heads and hearts from being invaded by that strange decaying force. As for the rest, they really could not care so much. In any case, the Feng and Yun clans had countless young disciples, so there was no need to worry about the end of the line. Oh, what they needed to urgently consider now was, why did this happen? What exactly was going on? Why did he lose 8 skysores in a single trip? And why did the 4 young masters all become like this? We know that you went to deal with esteemed Ling Xian, but isn't this situation too miserable? What was the cause and effect of this? Furthermore, after Yunichen came back and said that they had fallen into a trap, but the person behind it was most likely not Zhuo, the higher-ups of the Feng and Yun clans couldn't help but feel even more furious. Fallen into a trap? Who was the mastermind behind it? How did they scheme in the meantime? As for why it wasn't Zhuo, Taoist Yin had a very good reason. I've checked the poison. Although I can't completely identify the source of the poison, I can still confirm a few of its components. That poison is a mixed poison. Not only is there no sign of using poison to subdue poison, there is no sign of them restraining each other. Instead, there is a sign of extreme destruction. Such a method of using poison is definitely not something that a mere Zhuo can possess. Moreover, the poison that I have identified so far includes the heaven-burning poison, the soul-burning poison, the corpse-rotting poison, and the ghost domain poison. There are definitely other poisons. It is a pity that my knowledge is limited, and I am unable to identify all of them from the remnants. Zhuo doesn't even have the qualifications to possess one of these poisons, let alone all of them. Actually, in my opinion, it's a waste to use these poisons to deal with Yun Pialiu and the others. We only need to use a few of them to achieve the same strategic goal. Furthermore, according to what I saw on the battlefield, Zhuo didn't know the effects of the poison at all. He must have used it more than twice in a row, which is a huge waste. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's a waste of natural resources. But it also indirectly proves that Zhuo didn't know the effects of the poison and how precious it was. In my opinion, the only person in this world who has such a method of poisoning, who can collect so many kinds of strange poisons and make them into such a poison, is the non-poisonous sorcerer. And Zhuo, how could he have anything to do with the non-poisonous sorcerer? He's the #1 human favor token in the continent of astral souls. How could he have anything to do with the higher-ups of the Umno Alliance? Not to mention that the non-poisonous sorcerer has always been good at explaining things in simple terms. He rarely leaves the territory of the Umno alliance. It's basically impossible for him to have anything to do with Swishaoduo. I'm more inclined to believe what Swishaoduo said. Someone else arranged this behind the scenes. It's probably not a lie. In other words, there must be other forces and other people between the two sides. So, at least in my opinion, the key question now should be the person behind the scenes. Yunichen's voice sounded tired and weak, but what he said lifted everyone's spirits and made them fall into deep contemplation. Now only when the four of them wake up can we figure out whether there's really someone else behind the scenes. If there's someone else, then Swishaoduo didn't lie. We can target this person and the forces behind him. In this way, the responsibility of the human favor token will be reduced, and there will be a lot of room for mediation. Chapter 944. But if he didn't, it means that Swishaoduo lied. But if Swishaoduo lied, regardless of the reason, the consequences won't be worse for us. After all, based on the current situation, this matter is definitely related to the non-poisonous shaman. When the time comes, we can deal with Swishaoduo directly. We have a good reason to do so, because colluding with the non-poisonous shaman of the Umno Alliance is an absolute betrayal to the Astral Soul's mainland. Our two continents are allies, so it's perfectly justifiable for us to go after the traitors. If that's the case, we can do whatever we want when the time comes. We have a good reason to do so. Someone suggested. Then why don't we just ignore the investigation and use this reason to deal with Swishaoduo? We can even use this to erase our mistake in dealing with the esteemed master of human favor. After all, we're dealing with the traitors who colluded with the non-poisonous shaman. How's that possible? The higher-ups of the Astral Soul's mainland aren't pushovers. As long as Swishaoduo didn't instigate it, they'll be able to find out in a matter of minutes. At that time, if we use this reason to frame the esteemed master of human favor, we'll be dealt with both new and old debts. The only flaw that Swishaoduo has revealed, or rather, the only thing we can use is the poison. We're also the ones who said that the non-poisonous shaman is involved, so this explanation might not hold water. If it's completely overturned, we'll be in an even more passive position. Yunichen analyzed in greater detail. Everyone nodded in agreement. His words made sense. At this moment, a voice sneered. You know that we'll be in an even more passive position? Looks like you're quite clear-headed. Everyone turned to see two old Taoists in apricot yellow robes, walking in with the demeanor of immortals. However, both of their faces were filled with anger. They were Taoist Feng and Taoist Yun. Greetings, forefathers. The people from House Feng and House Feng immediately knelt on the ground. To them, these two were true patriarchs, and all of them were descendants of these two. Taoist Feng and Taoist Yun walked in with angry faces. After a few words, they had figured out the situation. After all this time, what's the reason for this? We still haven't found the reason? The two Taoists were almost mad. Did you grow up eating shit? This sentence had been lingering in their hearts for a long time, but they couldn't say it because they were forefathers. Let me take a look. Taoist Feng and Taoist Yun's eyes pupils they looked at each other, and the first thing they thought of was the poisonous shaman. Only the non-poisonous shaman could create such an extremely vicious and yet, at the same time, it exists completely. Taoist Feng sighed. You need the 9 transformation spirit pill to have a chance. TTS, big boss lays that required luck. Up until now, Thunder Taoist had only refined 3 furnaces of 9 transformation golden pills in the past 37,000 years. In the process of refining these 9 transformation golden pills, the furnaces had exploded 3 times, which was an average of 1 explosion per time. As for the cauldrons that didn't succeed in refining golden transformation pills, they had exploded countless times. It was obvious how precious the golden transformation pills were. To take out 4 of them at once. Even Taoist Feng and Taoist Yin couldn't take out such a number. Even if they could, they wouldn't bear to. After all, golden transformation pills were of great use to their realm. It wasn't worth it to use it to save 4 juniors, who were only at the god royal mystic realm. Even if they were geniuses, it still wasn't worth it. Give each of them Anne's golden transformation pill. Let's save their lives first, but their injuries. Taoist Feng and Taoist Yun sighed. This poison's too vicious. I'm afraid there's no hope of curing it. The 4 young masters' mother wiped her tears. Doesn't that mean my sons will become eunuchs? From sons to daughters? This change was a little too big. Taoist Yin took out 2 golden transformation pills. He ground them, dissolved them with spiritual water, and fed them to the 4 of them. The golden transformation pills' effects were miraculous. Not long after, the 4 of them woke up. Then, as they spoke, from the beginning to the end, the 2 families were left speechless. As expected, they acted on their own, and wanted to take the credit for themselves. However, the process purpose was no longer important. In the end, it was obvious that they couldn't do it anymore. They should have run early, but they still chose to fight. Why did you suggest a fight? At that time, we got insiders' information, and knew all the details of the other parties. It's rare to turn the situation around, so we naturally wouldn't give up. How did you get the information? Someone sent us information, a note. A note? The group of old foxes couldn't help but sigh again. There's actually another person who set this up. There's really a mastermind. Someone gave you a note, and you believed it? Why didn't he contact you earlier or later? Why did he have to contact you at such a delicate moment? You believed him just like that? Yin family's patriarch was so angry that he was trembling. That person was obviously afraid that you'd run away, so he ruined his plan. That's why he gave you the so-called information, giving you the illusion that everything was under his control. Yet, the 4 of you didn't know that it was a trap, and even smugly suggested a fight. You stepped into the other party's trap, and after that, you still had to stand there obediently, waiting for him to poison you. Everyone was speechless. Now that he said that, everyone understood. This was really a trap. The person who set this up in the dark had long planned to destroy the Tao League's power. Therefore, when he saw that the situation was deteriorating, he quickly came out and sent the information, allowing the 2 sides to continue fighting until the Tao League's side was completely destroyed. The other party grasped the idea of the 4 young masters of the Tao League, wanting to gain merit and rise to the top, and set up this trap to destroy them. When one side proposed a fight, the other side immediately accepted it. Swordsmanship even suggested a fight with all the members. This way of fighting seemed to be greatly disadvantageous to their side. Naturally, Swordsmanship wasn't afraid. Swordsmanship had a big killing weapon in his hands. Then, because they were the ones who initiated the fight, there was no room for retreat. Therefore, a big fight with all the members was formed. Another key point of this game was that the other party wouldn't take it seriously at all. After a few words of persuasion, he started to poison them. On the other side, they were still foolishly arranging their troops in formation, waiting for the final decisive battle, where the blades and spears would collide with each other. Each and every one of them was well-behaved and lined up neatly. Then, the other party calmly released poison on the neatly arranged troops. Therefore, the other side was taken away in one wave without any resistance. What the fuck? After understanding the cause and effect, all the higher-ups of the 2 families were speechless for a long time. Such a strange thing actually happened. Even until now, the other party is still looking for trouble with us. Because we sent the flying heavens to deal with the people on the human token, we did all the things we shouldn't have done. This time, we're really going to die with everlasting regret. I'd like to see who's so scheming. Double quotes. Too vicious. Simply. Everyone gasped in amazement. The person who set this up in the dark took advantage of human nature, psychology, environment, and situation to the extreme. And the person didn't show up at all. Who is this person? Family head Yin only felt his blood pressure rising, and a wave of dizziness surged in his head. Luckily, I don't have a heart disease. Otherwise, I'd definitely be angered to death by these bastards. If I really die here, I'll be the weirdest person in the world. Yin Pialia mumbled. Yin Pialia's mouth was rotten into a hole, and his words were vague. Where's the note? Family head Yin was about to go crazy. If it weren't for the presence of the old ancestor, family head Yin really wanted to tear Yin Pialiu into pieces right now. How infuriating. How could there be such a blockhead in this world? Moreover, he had appeared in his own home, and even caused such a huge disaster. It's in the spatial ring. At this point, Yin Pialia finally felt a little lucky. Fortunately, he didn't throw it away. Otherwise, looking at the situation today, he might have been beaten to death. Finally, the source of all the misfortune had been found. With the note in hand, Taoist Yin immediately issued a death order. Even if we have to search the entire continent, we still have to find him. You have to find out who wrote this note for me. If you can't find it, then the Wind and Cloud clans don't need to live. This is the first time in my life that I've suffered such humiliation. Taoist Yin was truly driven mad. It was indeed a conspiracy. Sure enough, he had been set up and used. As expected. How vicious. Because of this piece of paper, the Yin family had lost a pillar that supported the heavens. A heavenly king, one of the top powerhouses in the Tao League, had been buried because of this piece of paper. This hatred was absolutely irreconcilable. Investigate. Thoroughly investigate. Patriarch Yin ordered with a black face. Immediately, someone took out the crumpled piece of paper to make copies. Make 1,000,000 copies. Go find. The people from the Yin and Feng families had already gone crazy. They had been played too ruthlessly. If they couldn't find a way to vent, the two families felt that they would vomit to death. Finally, it was over. Walking out of the room of the 4 young masters who were still rotting, Taoist Yin and Taoist Feng both felt like they had a cerebral hemorrhage. How could they raise such a thing? Were they still human? People often said that they were scamming their fathers. This wasn't just scamming their fathers, it was directly scamming their ancestors. Just one scam, and they had destroyed their own foundation. They really wanted to kill them. Let's prepare for the funeral. Taoist Yin sighed softly, his expression indescribably desolate. Chapter 945. Patriarch Yin and many of the elders were shocked. Old ancestor. This. What kind of funeral is this? They thought to themselves, isn't it just the death of those 8 Skysore experts? Even if it's to buy people's hearts, it's not to the point where the entire Yun clan has to wear mourning clothes, right? Although those little bastards don't even have their manhood anymore. They can't just hold a funeral for Gigi. Taoist Yun let out a long sigh. His lips trembled as he said, Bloodsword Heavenly King Yin Shangsong, your Yin clan's 4th-generation ancestor, was killed by the flood, which, because of your actions against esteemed Ling Run, his soul was scattered, and not even his bones were left. Patriarch Yin stumbled subconsciously. His eyes were wide open, and his body swayed. Suddenly, he saw stars in front of his eyes. Then he felt a sharp pain in his chest. There was a sweet taste in his throat, and he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Then he fell limply to the ground unconscious. Everyone else in the Yin clan looked as if they had heard a bolt from the blue. Each and every one of them was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. This piece of bad news, was a huge blow to the Yin clan. Yin Shangsong, the Bloodsword Heavenly King, was the most promising person in the Yin clan. No, it should be said that he had already reached the top. He was already second only to the 7 swords in the Tao League. No one would have thought that he would lose his life because of such a small matter. With Yin Shangsong's death, the Yin clan had lost their greatest hope for development. They were all hoping that Yin Shangsong could improve and reach the same position as the 7 swords in the Tao League, for the Yin clan to have another powerhouse. At that time, the Yin clan would become the new number 1 clan in the Tao League. With 2 powerhouses, they could even be on par with the Lei clan. But now that he had actually died in such an understated manner, how could the word heart-wrenching be enough to describe it? Evil creature. One of the elders of the Yin clan cried. Everyone in the Yin clan was dumbstruck. The heavenly king had fallen. Taoist Yin sighed with melancholy. For a moment, the sky above the Yin clan was overcast. The members of the Yin family rushed towards the continent of astral souls with bloodshot eyes, while carrying the huge amount of copied words. We must find out who is the one behind all of this. He had to find out who wrote these words. His status was noble, and his status was revered. These words were the clue. If this person didn't die, this enmity wouldn't disappear. The Feng and Yin families had gone crazy. Although they still hated Zhuo Xiaoduo, no one dared to act rashly at this stage. Countless experts of the Yin family were gnashing their teeth. Zhuo Xiaoduo, hurry up and fly. When you reach the fairy realm, it will also be the day of your death. At that time, everyone will no longer have any misgivings. At that time, even if you, Zhuo Xiaoduo, have the ability and connection to the heavens, as long as we are willing to pay the price, we can still kill you. The flood which isn't your father, is she? It can't be your father-in-law, right? Don't tell me that he'll always be on your side. After all, the two continents were enemies of each other. However, no matter how much they hated Zhuo Xiaoduo and wanted to eat his flesh, they still tacitly kept their mouths shut about the poison. Even when dealing with the person who set this trap, they couldn't mention the poison. It was too sensitive. Everyone knew that the poison must have come from the non-poisonous shaman. There was no doubt about this. However, this matter was better not to mention it. If that old monster was lured out, no one would be able to deal with him. If he was unhappy and came to the territories of the Feng and Yin families, it would be hard to say if the two families could still exist, that they couldn't afford to offend him. Taoist Yin and Taoist Feng also had the same thought. The name of the poisonous sorcerer was even scarier than the flood sorcerer in terms of horror. The flood which could at most kill you, but the non-poisonous shaman could exterminate your entire family. You could only watch helplessly, unable to use your strength. That the news of the Tao League's blood sword Heavenly King being smashed to death by the flood, which spread across the three continents like a gust of wind. The three continents were shocked. In the beginning, 99% of the people didn't believe it. How could such a thing happen? The flood which wasn't crazy. Why would she go to the Tao League to kill a Heavenly King? Whether it was from the overall situation, or from the perspective of human relations, such a situation shouldn't have happened. However, this explosive news was quickly verified. It couldn't be any more true. For a time, everyone was discussing this matter in a flurry. At this moment, the king of Zhuolu and his wife arrived at the Sanqing Holy Mountain again. Sorry, I'm here again. This time, I still don't know what happened. I'm just following orders. What do you want? Tell me. My master asked me to take 9 reincarnation golden pills. I don't know why either. Bullshit. Tell your master to go to hell. Taoist Thunder was furious. I've only refined 3 cauldrons of 9 reincarnation golden pills in 37,000 years. Among them, there's only 1 cauldron of 9 reincarnation golden pills. Since then, it's as if I've used up all my luck. I haven't refined any more. There were only 12 pills in 1 cauldron. You, Zhuo, want half of it. Why don't you just die? One had to know that these 6 pills weren't just half, but more than half. After refining them, he had already used up 2 of them by chance. Now he only had 10 left. If he really took out 6 pills as compensation this time, Taoist Thunder trembled. The current situation is that his son is fine, but we've suffered a great loss. A Heavenly King died because of this. The Tao League has already suffered a great loss. How can he still ask for the 9 reincarnation golden pills? Senior, your words are strange. Your blood sword Heavenly King died, but it wasn't killed by the astral souls. The flood which has nothing to do with us. Besides, the blood sword Heavenly King's death has nothing to do with me coming here to take the golden pills. Yin Zhonghu said solemnly. Besides, I don't understand a single word of what you're saying. I'm just following orders. That's all. If you don't give it to me, we'll turn around and leave. Taoist Thunder was so angry that he pulled out a strand of his beard. However, in the end, the king of Zhuolu, Yin Zhonghu returned with a full load. Looking at Yin Zhonghu's receding figure, the Taoists of the Tao League sighed. I can't believe that Yun Zhonghu has made even more progress this time compared to last time. It's obvious that Bai Yundua's aura has become much more condensed. Taoist Thunder sighed softly. On the other hand, the heavenly kings of our Tao League. I'm afraid they're no match for the left and right heavenly kings of the astral souls. The only thing that can be compared to them now is that everyone has the word heavenly king. Hurry up and lead the army to the Sun Moon Pass. If not, the Tao League will really be finished. When Taoist Thunder said this, he clearly felt that he had never felt so depressed in tens of thousands of years. He really couldn't understand. He had lived like this for so many years, but from this year onwards, he didn't do anything else but clean up his mess. The Tao League lost a heavenly king. Yu Dongtian gloated over their misfortune for a few days because of this. Blood Sword is dead. Ha ha ha. Dongfeng, treat me to a drink to celebrate. Ha ha ha. I heard that Blood Sword died mysteriously. Shimen, come. Prepare some dishes and treat me to a drink. I'll tell you about it. Haha, Yin Shangsong is dead. He even hit you back then. Isn't that right, Beigong? Come. Prepare some dishes, and take out your precious wine to thank me. Yu Dongtian went around looking for people to drink with. The 4 marshals at the border were forced to take turns treating him. The great commanders were extremely fed up with this. Why should we treat you to a drink when Yin Shangsong is dead? Did you kill him? It's not like we don't know. The whole continent knows about it. Do we still need you to tell us? Marshal Beigong was especially annoyed. Why should I thank you when Yin Shangsong is dead? But because of Yu Dongtian's status, the 3 marshals pinched their noses and treated him to a meal. But when Yu Dongtian came to Nan Zhengxian to take advantage of him, he was mercilessly chased out by Marshal Nan. Nan Zhengxian, ha ha ha. Yin Shangsong is dead. You treat me to a meal. Get out. Get out. Men, prepare the extermination battle formation. Damn you, Nan Zhengxian, are you rebelling? Rebelling? Heavenly King of the Right, aren't you embarrassed to say that? I didn't know until now that I was blacklisted because I took the blame for you. You're really annoying. Nan Zhengxian was really angry. What does this have to do with me? What kind of trouble is not caused by you? Why did I have to take the blame from tens of thousands of miles away? And it was a super blame. And I didn't know anything from the beginning, that I didn't offend anyone, and was in charge of the capital. I was also responsible for cleaning up the mess for all of you. In the process, I lost countless good things. Just thinking about it makes my heart ache. In the end, the blame fell from the sky, and I was blacklisted by Boss. And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the truth. I was always anxious, thinking that I offended Boss. I kept reflecting and reflecting. Every day I asked myself, what did I do wrong? In the end, now I finally understand. I didn't do anything wrong. It was Yu Dongtian, this bastard, who put all the blame on me. It was a completely undeserved disaster. And he didn't even inform me after it happened. He let me stay in the blacklist, and he went to have fun. And he was still watching the show. You could have at least told me if you did this. Get out. I don't know you in this life. If you dare to come in front of me again, I don't care what heavenly king you are. I'll fight to the death. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the heavenly king of the right was chased out of the camp by the marshal of the south with the saber in hand. He showed no mercy and left no room for negotiation. But Yu Dongtian was indeed the heavenly king of the right. With just one sentence, Marshal Nan, who looked like they couldn't coexist with each other, cupped his hands and welcomed the heavenly king in. Beyond their expectations, there was really too much Xian ice at the bottom of the Whitehead Mountain. First it was the mountain. After digging 300 meters down, a layer of ice began to appear. They dug all the way down until they reached a layer of very sticky mountain. After digging for more than 2,000 meters, they reached the layer of ice again. The ice layer continued to descend for 1,000 meters, and the ice layer began to change subtly. It became colder and harder, and after another 500 meters, they arrived at the mysterious ice layer. Zhuo Xiaoyan wanted to start harvesting from here, but Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't allow her to do so. Instead, she chose to continue digging until she reached the bottom. When she dug out stones and soil again, she turned back and started harvesting from the most central position. Then, she continued to dig holes along the ice layer. Every few hundred meters, she would leave dozens of meters behind. In case this place collapsed after digging for about 2,000 meters, the ice spirit, which had been silent all this time, spontaneously flew out from the spirit-snatching sword. It was heading toward a huge piece of Xian ice in front of them. It even shone with 3 colors, which was a spectacular sight. Its icy cold power was at least 100 times stronger than ordinary Xian ice. The ice spirit flew over and circled around the Xian ice a few times. Its small face was full of melancholy and sadness. There's a dead ice spirit inside. Zhuo Xiaoyan could feel Zhao's sadness and explained in a low voice. How many ice spirits are there in this world? Isn't it said that ice spirits are very rare, and there aren't many of them? Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that this was very magical. He felt that there were many ice souls. And even if there were many of them, there was a limit to how much they were worth. How could the ice spirit not feel Zhuo Xiaoduo's contempt? It angrily flew in front of Zhuo Xiaoduo and bared its fangs and claws. It put its hands on its waist and pointed at Zhuo Xiaoduo. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't understand a single thing it said. He only felt that this little guy flying in front of him and shouting with its hands on its waist was a little cute. Zhuo Xiaoyan couldn't help but laugh. He translated. Back when the primordial world was first created, the first snowflakes that fell, every snowflake was the essence of snow. After the snow spirit essences fall on the ground, they won't melt immediately. Instead, they will find a place to hide their vitality and wait for fate. This is actually the survival instinct of life. However, most of the snow soul essence melted before they even landed on the ground, let alone survive. The small portion of snow soul essence that was left would turn the surrounding water into ice after finding a place where it could continue its life and survive. The snow spirit essences will absorb nutrients from the solid ice to survive. Only when there is enough water in the area can they form an ice array. At this time, the snow spirit essences will be able to transform into ice spirits after a long time of baptism. However, when the water in the origin land turns into solid ice, there will be no more water outside. The ice array will become a tree without roots. If the ice spirit essences are just formed and don't have the ability to move, it will be the most difficult time for the ice spirit essences. At this time, there is only one way to replenish the ice spirit essences. That is, it will have to rain or snow to replenish the ice spirit essences. If it doesn't rain or snow for a long time, the ice spirit essences can only continue to release the cold energy accumulated in their bodies to turn the solid ice into a deeper layer of ice seed. Slowly, the normal solid ice will turn into mystic ice. When it is normal ice, the ice spirit essences will absorb nutrients when there is water to use. However, after absorbing the nutrients, there is no more water to replenish them. They can only release their energy to let the ice form another layer before they can continue to absorb the nutrients. At that time, when it turns into mystic ice, although it is still ice, there is not much water left in it. Mystic ice can be used as metal, even stronger than normal metal. At this time, if there is no rain for a long time, the ice spirit essences will only become weaker and weaker, because they have no more nutrients for life. If it takes longer, they will seal themselves in the mystic ice and die. After the ice spirit essences die, all of their essence will be scattered into the mystic ice. The mystic ice that contains the essence of the ice spirit essences is the best food and nutrients for other ice spirits. There is a reason why the mystic ice nourishes the ice spirits. However, the mystic ice that can only be made from ice spirits is nourishment for other ice spirits. However, it is a cage for them. Zhuo Xiaoyan said. Looking at the situation here, I am afraid that there is more than one snow spirit essences that fell here. Otherwise, it would be difficult to create such a large scale. Unfortunately, because of the terrain, there are too many snow spirits that fell here. There is a serious shortage of water. These ice spirits are fighting for water. In the end, they are all trapped here. Speaking of this, Shuoxianyan could not help but sigh. What a pity. On the other side, Ice Spirit Xiao Duo walked around the mystic ice for a few rounds. Finally, he sighed softly and put the mystic ice spirit essences into the ice spirit space. However, as he walked forward, Xiao Duo's expression and behavior became more and more silent. Shuoxianyan tried to persuade Xiao Duo, but he was still gloomy and depressed. She hurriedly gave Xiao Duo a look. She meant, "You should help Xiao Duo think." Xiao Duo rolled his eyes and said, "Io, if the one trapped here is little Xiao Duo, and the other ice spirits see it, hee 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 ha 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 ha." In an instant, Xiao Duo exploded in anger. He flew in front of Xiao Duo, bared his fangs and brandished his claws, and began to complain about Xiao Duo's shamelessness with extreme indignation. He almost lost control of his emotions. This bastard cursed me. How vicious. How despicable. But it was a pity that Xiao Duo couldn't understand what little Xiao Duo was saying. Instead, his sharp and unkind words entered little Xiao Duo's ears. If Xiao Duo, oh, he will be eaten by other ice spirits. If Xiao Duo is in here, how many colors will he be? Tisk tsk tsk. If Xiao Duo is eaten by other ice spirits, will he turn into shit? This is a philosophical question. Xiao Duo provoked Xiao Duo 5 or 6 times. Every time he saw that Xiao Duo's emotions were about to go down, he would say something timely, and then Xiao Duo would go berserk again. Then, Xiao Duo would keep provoking Xiao Duo, but he would not say anything. He would just keep collecting Xian ice and wait for Xiao Duo to calm down. Then, he would provoke him again. Xiao Duo was so angry that his stomach bulged a lot. Along the way, he did not care about being sad anymore. He cursed Xiao Duo angrily the entire way. Xiao Duo's face was red. He wanted to pounce on Xiao Duo and bite him to death. Along the way, they encountered another 3 or 4 ice spirits that were trapped to death. Xiao Duo did not even think about it and kept collecting them. He did not even look at them. He only cared about bickering with Xiao Duo. The more he scolded, the angrier he became. The more he scolded, the angrier he became. The more he scolded, the more fluent he became. As he scolded, he learned 2 words and kept cursing. Despicable. 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 As he scolded, Xiao Duo looked up and laughed even more shamelessly. Ha ha ha. You look so funny when you're angry. Ha ha ha. Xiao Duo was so angry that he was dumbfounded. In the end, Xiao Duo was so angry that he could not even walk properly. He floated around, gesticulating, and scolding Xiao Duo as he worked. He was so angry that he felt dizzy. Finally, all the Xian ice was collected. However, Xiao Duo and Shuoxianyan only collected the core parts. They left the rest behind. They did not kill all the Xian ice spirits in one fell swoop. Instead, they left them here to continue the transformation. This time, the harvest was exceptionally rich. Xiao Duo's ice spirit space was filled to the brim. Shuoxianyan's space ring was also filled to the brim. Even Xiao Duo's annihilation tower was filled with Xian ice spirits. Xian Ice Mountain. Of course, those that were close to the Dao League and belonged to the Dao League were all poached by Xiao Duo. If you don't have enough Xian ice in the future, you can come here to dig more, Xiao Duo said to Shuoxianyan. I'll leave a passage for you later. Shuoxianyan looked at her own inventory, then at Xiao Duo's inventory, and then at Xiao Duo's 2 ice mountains. She said contentedly, this much Xian ice should be enough for a lifetime. There's no need to deliberately make more. Let's leave some for the fated ones in the future. TSK, you're so ignorant, Xiao Duo said disdainfully. How many good things have you gotten? You want to use them for a lifetime? You're just a god reigning god now. After you choose the fairy rail, these things might not even be enough for a month. Shuoxianyan felt that it made sense. She asked humbly, then what should I do? Stupid. Xiao Duo was exasperated as he lectured. Dig. Keep digging. There aren't many places like this in the Astral Souls continent. Shuoxianyan pouted. Stupid. Even if the Astral Souls continent doesn't have any, the Tao League continent doesn't have any, right? The Alliance continent doesn't have any? When the Demon League returns, don't tell me the Demon League continent doesn't have any. Zhuo Xiaoduo lectured Zhuo Xiaoyan from a commanding position. He suddenly felt that his temperament as the head of the family was off the charts. He pointed at Zhuo Xiaoyan's forehead and said, even if you don't want to lose face and don't take all the resources of the Tao League and the Alliance, you're still enemies with the Demon League. When the time comes, don't you know how to rob them? Stupid Nian Mao. Zhuo Xiaoyan was obedient at first, but her forehead tilted back, and she suddenly came to her senses. Her cute and innocent expression suddenly became serious. She frowned and her eyes suddenly became fierce. She slowly revealed her sharp canine teeth. Doggy you. Woof woof. Zhuo Xiaoduo hurriedly barked twice. He shook his head and wagged his tail, smiling mischievously. Hee hee. I'm wrong. Ulia didadang dang dangdi, Nian Mao is so beautiful. Zhuo Xiaoyan's fierce expression instantly melted. She burst into laughter and sneered at Zhuo Xiaoduo's face. Doggy. Hee hee. Ha ha ha. Burp. Chapter 947. Zhuo Xiaoyan laughed so hard that tears almost came out of her eyes. Xiao Duo was so angry that her eyes were burning. She paced back and forth angrily. She felt indignant that Zhuo Xiaoyan had been coaxed by this annoying guy with just one sentence. How can you be coaxed so easily? This won't do. You won't be angry, scold him, hit him, and then ignore him for many days and torture him. So that you can avenge me? However, the Moon Monarch's ring is definitely much better than yours. Why don't you open it and see if there's anything good inside? I think that the true monarch will definitely not be wrong about your successor. Zhuo Xiaoduo smiled mysteriously. I'm not curious about other people's rings, but I'm really curious about yours. What's so good about it? Then let's open it here and see. Zhuo Xiaoyan was also a little restless. She was really curious. What kind of existence was the Moon Monarch? There must be a lot of good things in her inheritance ring, right? However, who was the Moon Monarch? Well, in short, she was an existence beyond her knowledge. Then, there must be a lot more good things. Then let's open it and see. Zhuo Xiaoduo urged. With his obsession with wealth, of course he coveted it even more. What was his wife's was naturally his. There was nothing wrong with that. Then let's open it now. Zhuo Xiaoyan took out the Moon Monarch's space ring without hesitation. However, she felt cold to the touch, as if even her soul was suddenly frozen. It's so cold, Zhuo Xiaoyan said subconsciously. Zhuo Xiaoduo also subconsciously grinned. If even Zhuo Xiaoyan, who practiced the Moon Sutra, said it was cold, then it was really cold. The divine consciousness of the Moon Lord on the ring had long dissipated. This also led to Zhuo Xiaoyan using only a few minutes to successfully nurture the ring with her ice spirit qi. She used her divine soul to imprint on it and easily opened the ring. The space inside the ring is very big, but there aren't many things inside. There aren't any clothes or cosmetics. I thought there would be many magnificent clothes from ancient times, like the ones worn by the Moon Lord. Zhuo Xiaoyan said to Zhuo Xiaoduo after rummaging for a while. Zhuo Xiaoduo's forehead was filled with black lines. Sister, my dear sister, what time is it now? How can you still be thinking about clothes and cosmetics? Magnificent raiment. Nian Mao, you're focusing on the wrong thing. He really couldn't understand how a woman's brain works. I didn't see anything useful. Zhuo Xiaoyan looked like she was about to break down. There are only a few small boxes. There are some things inside and the rest are. There's more inside, haha. After pausing for a moment, he smiled somewhat embarrassedly. There was an isolated space inside the ring, and in this isolated space, there was a kind of black stone piled up neatly one by one. It was a special black stone that emitted a deep light, and contained an endless amount of cold attribute spiritual energy. This is the Moonstone? Did the Moon Lord name it himself? Zhuo Xiaoyan was suddenly in an indescribable state of ecstasy. Then, Xiao Duo came out of the Spirit Snatcher sword excitedly, and quickly went into the space ring to check and confirm the situation. The Lunar Immortal Stone was a rare treasure for the Ice Spirit. How many of these stones are there? After confirming the quality, Swishaoduo was most concerned about the quantity. No matter how good the stone was, if there were only a few pieces, it would not be of much use. There are about 170,000 to 180,000 pieces, or even more. Swishaoyan opened her eyes wide. She suddenly felt that she was so rich. Now that she had a few mountains worth of Xian ice, she realized that she already had more than 100,000 of these magical moon stones with her. For a moment, she felt that her heart was about to melt. What else? There's nothing else. Swishaoyan was very satisfied at this moment. Her eyes were smiling like crescent moons. With these, it's already too much. Useless. Swishaoduo despised Swishaoyan's contentment. If it were me, even if I had 1,000,000 pieces, I would only say, why don't you have 10 million pieces? What's the use of such a small amount? After feeling the moon stone in her hand for a moment, Swishaoyan could not help but tremble. She said in surprise, this is from the same source as the ice spirit. This is also the first snow in the world. It fell on the moon and formed pure Xian ice on the moon. Knowing that Swishaoduo did not understand, Swishaoyan was so excited that her face glowed. She explained automatically, here due to the sunlight. Even the Xian ice has some heat. It means that when the water is frozen, there is still some yang qi in the bones. But the Xian ice on the moon is the purest one. It has no yang qi at all. It's 10 times stronger than the one we dug up just now. Swishaoduo listened and asked eagerly, what else? For a moment, a tinge of jealousy rose in her heart. Why didn't I get the Sun Lord's ring and inheritance? Only Nian Mao got the Moon Lord's. That this was not fair. It was too unfair. Xiao squirmed out of his arms and squeaked. She rolled her eyes and looked at him. Mom, what are you thinking about? What else do you want? There are also these boxes. Swishaoyan took out a few boxes that looked very ordinary. They were made of the highest quality jade of astral souls. Note that the highest quality jade of astral souls was now labeled as very ordinary by Duo Dog and Nian Mao. When he opened the box, he saw that there were only a few small transparent bottles inside. Inside the bottles was a glistening yellow half-solid, half-liquid kind of thing that looked very appetizing. Swishaoyan picked up a bottle and opened it. Suddenly, a refreshing osmanthus fragrance wafted out. Swishaoyan had only smelled this fragrance, but he could already feel that his soul had become much more awake. She even felt like she was in a trance. Swishaoduo also had a similar feeling. Both of them sensed that after smelling or coming in contact with this fragrance, their soul power started to show signs of slowly increasing. Although it was slow, it continued to increase bit by bit. It was real. Both of them couldn't help but be shocked. Then, they were so surprised that they almost couldn't speak. Their cultivation had improved greatly recently, and they understood more and more how difficult the path of cultivation was. They also realized how difficult it was to improve the soul power, which was the most difficult part of cultivation. Usually, they would only be able to improve a little after cultivating for a few days. Well, this was not something a normal cultivator would say. For a normal cultivator, to increase the power of their soul bit by bit, it would take years of accumulation and painstaking effort. If they could improve a little bit in a few days, it would be a rare opportunity. Both of them had countless opportunities and limitless resources. They even had a huge cheating device like the Tower of Emptiness in their hands. Therefore, if there was anything that sounded unreasonable, please forgive them. After all, this was something that normal people couldn't get even if they were envious of it. Both of them had always felt that it was difficult to improve their soul power. Now that they could improve their soul power, just by smelling this fragrance, what would happen if they ate it? Could this be the legendary laurel honey that has long been extinct? Swishaoyan instinctively raised her head to look for the moon. Then she remembered that they were now thousands of meters underground. How could they see the moon? She hurriedly turned back. Laurel honey? Swishaoduo didn't understand. In fact, Swishaoyan didn't know either. She had only seen this name by chance in the ancient books of the Nine Heavens Pavilion. In fact, laurel honey was the best honey brewed from the essence of the nectar collected by special spiritual bees, after the innate spiritual plant, Laurel Palace laurel tree bloomed. This kind of laurel honey was not a priceless treasure, because it had been lost and was priceless. Instead, it was because in terms of nourishing the soul, it was the unparalleled best product in the world. It was also the best treatment for the soul injuries that were said to be incurable in the world. It could be said that every treatment was accurate, and the illness would be cured without any aftereffects. After the treatment, the patient's soul would even be improved to a certain extent. It was indeed a divine item that was hard to find. The only pity was that this legendary item had long been extinct in the world. It really only existed in legends. You have a total of. Zuo took a look. 99 bottles? Yes. Zuo Xiaoyan narrowed her eyes and said, You take 69 bottles, and I'll keep 30 bottles. You can get more from me when you're done. Sister, did you learn math from your music teacher? I took twice as many bottles as you did, and then I'll get more from you when I'm done? What kind of logic is this? Besides, I'm taking 69 bottles, isn't that too much? Zuo lectured her discontentedly, and looked like he was going to decline. Then he said refreshingly, Then I'll accept your kindness and take these 69 bottles. Zuo Xiaoyan rolled her eyes. She almost wanted to hit him. Let's drink one bottle each, and try the effect. Zuo was eager to take action. Use my share. Zuo Xiaoyan was furious. She said, You got so much, of course I'll drink yours. Haha. Both of them opened a bottle each, raised their heads and gulped it down. It's so delicious. Zuo wiped his mouth and felt like he hadn't had enough. It was too delicious. No wonder it was a legendary fantasy. Seeing that Zuo Xiaoyan's mouth was still wet, he couldn't help but exclaim, Don't move. Zuo Xiaoyan was about to wipe her mouth when she was shocked by him. She said, Ah. Zuo slowly leaned over and warned her seriously, Don't move. If you drop it, it'll be a waste. After saying that, he stuck out his tongue and licked Zuo Xiaoyan's mouth. He said, This is good stuff, don't waste it. Then he said, There's more on your lips. I'm sure there's more on my lips too. Don't waste it. This is a treasure of heaven and earth. If you waste even a little bit, you'll be punished by the heavens. As a result, oh, bad dog. Oh. Chapter 948. Zuo ate very meticulously. He ate tirelessly for more than 10 minutes before he finally finished all the laurel honey on Zuo Xiaoyan's lips. Zuo Xiaoyan's face and neck were all red from eating laurel honey. She pouted her slightly swollen red lips and said proudly, Put it away. You're not allowed to be so rude in the future. Okay, I won't do it again. Hee. I'm really afraid of wasting it this time. Just this once, don't do it again. Yes, Ma'am. You have the final say. Zuo licked his lips and smiled contentedly as he put away all 69 bottles. Of course, these 69 bottles included the 2 that had just been emptied. This is a priceless treasure. Even if it's just a bottle, it's still good stuff. I'll probably still be able to use some spirit water when I go back and rinse it. Just smelling it was already effective. I'll rinse it for swollen. Hee, when he's overjoyed. I'll take out an entire bottle and drink it in front of him. Zuo couldn't help but want to laugh as he imagined Li Qinglong's crumbling face. Then, he saw that Zuo Xiaoyan had already sat down cross-legged. Zuo had also felt the dizziness from the rapid increase in the power of his consciousness. He hurriedly sat down and began to circulate his energy to digest the honey. It had to be said that if there were people who knew how precious laurel honey was, they would probably faint on the spot if they saw the 2 of them drinking laurel honey like this. If they didn't faint, as long as their cultivation base was passable, they would definitely throw everything aside and beat the 2 of them up. This was the extremely precious laurel honey. Only 9 drops of laurel honey could be found in 1,000 years. There were at least 20 drops in this bottle, and the 2 of them had drunk it all. This was a super treasure that could heal the soul of a Dao integration stage cultivator with just 1 drop. Why didn't the 2 of you explode? In fact, Zuo and Zuo Xiaoyan were about to explode. If the laurel honey did not increase the power of the divine soul, but instead increased the power of the spiritual energy, the two siblings would definitely not be lucky. The moment the effects erupted, they would directly explode and die. Even their divine souls would be destroyed, and they would be consigned to eternal damnation. But when it came to nourishing the spirit, the situation was completely different. Compared to the shallow spiritual origin cultivation, the two spirit seeds were each more powerful than the other. It was far from what an ordinary person could compare with. In fact, even if their spiritual seeds were far stronger than ordinary people's, a bottle of laurel honey would still be too much for them to handle. However, these two had helpers. The laurel honey floated above his spiritual sea, constantly emitting its effects and expanding his spiritual sea. As for Zuoxiaoduo's spiritual sea, it was as if he had opened a restaurant. Xiaobai and Jiu both threw themselves onto the laurel honey and gulped it down. Xiao Long sniffed the laurel honey off to the side. It didn't have a physical body, so it couldn't eat. It could only smell. But even just smelling the laurel honey was beneficial. Its illusory body was slowly growing larger. Xiao also stood on the spiritual sea with its 3 pitch-black claws. Although its sharp little beak was like that of a chick pecking at rice, its speed and frequency were astonishingly fast. It was the fastest of them all. The Wahuang sword, which had been dormant for a long time, was also shuttling back and forth in the spiritual sea, intercepting the power of the laurel honey, and slowly mending its divine soul. One had to realize that the greatest flaw of the Wahuang sword was the damage to its divine soul. Now that it was being nourished by the laurel honey, it was a perfect combination. Zuoxiaoduo fed the 5 guys. Under such a fierce and wanton consumption, it didn't take long for them to no longer feel uncomfortable. On the contrary, Zuoxiaoyan, whose cultivation was higher, was struggling. She sat cross-legged and tried her best to bear it. In the spiritual sea, Xiao was the only one eating and drinking to its heart's content. At this moment, its belly was a little bloated, and its body was becoming more and more solid. Zuoxiaoyan's spiritual sea was also expanding crazily. Fortunately, her real cultivation had reached the peak of the god-reigning level. Otherwise, she might not have been able to pass this hurdle. But as long as she could bear it, it would be a great opportunity. Zuoxiaoyan struggled to bear it. Suddenly, she felt her palm warm up, and a warm force came in. It turned out that Zuoxiaoduo had reached out to help at the right time. Zuoxiaoyan's state of mind suddenly relaxed, and an instinctive sense of dependence arose spontaneously. What a good doggy! Whenever she had something she couldn't handle, he would always lend a helping hand. It was like this in the past, now, and in the future, it would be like this too. Therefore, the two spiritual sea connected. Zuoxiaoyan sent the laurel honey that she couldn't digest to Zuoxiaoduo. Over at Zuoxiaoduo's side, a few of his little playthings seemed to have not had their fill. Once they saw so many of them being sent over, they immediately rushed over. Eat, eat, eat. Eat, eat, eat. Eat, 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 eat. On Zuoxiaoyan's side, Ice Spirit looked up in surprise. Who stole my food and ate it? She couldn't help but feel angry. I can eat it later if I can't finish it. Who would complain about having more of this kind of food? Why was it suddenly taken away? What the hell? There was no time to think. It was taken away too quickly. Hurry up and eat it. Eat it. Eat it. Eat, eat, eat. Under these two effects, the pressure on Zuoxiaoyan was suddenly relieved. The slightly painful expression on her face turned into a comfortable one. After a long time. Finally, the two opened their eyes at the same time. Their eyes were filled with comfort, but there was also a lingering fear. Don't drink a bottle at once in the future, Zuoxiaoduo concluded. I can only take 1 drop at most. This thing is too powerful. Zuoxiaoyan emphasized. We almost had an accident. Thank goodness we have you. How are you, hubby? How are you, hubby? Then why don't you give me a kiss as a reward? Then. After a long time, the two celebrated the great increase in their spiritual sea power. Zuoxiaoyan deeply felt that she had been too impulsive. She pouted and said, just this once. Okay. While the two of them were celebrating outside, Little White and Little Jiu worked together to chase Xiao Xiao out. The two little fellows were so angry that their bodies trembled. After eating, they realized that there was another thing behind them. How many good things did you steal from us? You have legs, a head, and even wings. Can't you go and steal from others? Can't you see that we have nothing? What the fuck? You have 3 legs. That's even more wrong. The two little calabashes were so angry that they puffed up. Next time, they must tell mommy not to let this guy see such good things again. As for Xiaolong, how much can you absorb? Besides, we are still young and don't have enough power. We can't find him and beat him up yet. Let's record this first. Then, the two little calabashes happily went back to the Vitality Sea and continued to float. They were full of joy and complacency. Following this mommy was indeed much better than following the original mommy. Not only did this mommy have the Vitality Sea, but she could also eat souls often and get such good things to nourish the spiritual sea. Moreover, she could eat as much as she wanted. This was more than not a loss. It was totally worth it. They had made the right choice. Delightful. Delightful. Of course, Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaonian did not know what was going on inside. The two of them began to study the jade scroll left by the Lunar Star Lord. True understanding of the Lunar Star. Zhuo Xiaonian said, "This is a set of cultivation techniques." As she spoke, she took it out and studied it carefully. After a few minutes, she suddenly exclaimed, "Damn! This is the complete version of the Moon Sutra." No, I should say that the Moon Sutra is only a part of the true understanding of the lunar star. It can't be. What a coincidence. Zhuo Xiaoduo was also shocked. How could there be such a good thing in the world? After getting this, I have paved the path of cultivation directly. I don't have to worry about going astray anymore. Zhuo Xiaonian was very excited. All the questions and doubts that she had in the process of cultivating the Moon Sutra in the past were all answered here. And they were all answered in secret. According to the true understanding of the lunar star, the Moon Sutra was at most the upper half of the true understanding of the lunar star. Although it could be cultivated step by step to an extremely high level, the cultivation technique was ultimately not complete. The true understanding of the lunar star included all the upper, middle, and lower parts. It was a dreamy cultivation technique that pointed directly to the great Tao. That's great. Zhuo Xiaoduo slapped her thigh excitedly. Are there any other legacies? There's also a set of light shadow sword technique, a set of clear radiance sword technique, as well as light shadow footwork, clear radiance footwork, and a tracking technique called Cinnamon Horizon. It uses the petals of cinnamon osmanthus to execute a soul-leading tracking technique. No matter in the sky or on the ground, no one can escape from it. It seems that the Azure Dragon Sage was defeated by this technique. What else? There is also a piece of cultivation comprehension. Zhuo Xiaonian was also very confused. This lunar star monarch did not introduce herself at all in the things that she left behind. The only name they knew was Lunar Star Monarch, was from the Azure Dragon Lord's mouth in the timeline. Thinking back to the timeline, the Lunar Star Monarch took the initiative to stay behind and perish together with the Azure Dragon Lord. That the two of them could faintly feel that this Lunar Star Monarch seemed to be impatient. Or rather, she could not wait to disappear into the long river of history as soon as possible. That is, it would be best if no one knew about me. It was not that Zhuo Xiaonian was blindly thinking, but this feeling was very obvious. After seeing Zhuo Xiaonian's gains and feeling ecstatic for Zhuo Xiaonian, that Zhuo Xiaoduo suddenly felt a little self-pity. Now that I think about it, I didn't get anything from this trip. Originally, I had some hope of catching up with Sister Nian, but now that Sister Nian has obtained the true essence of the lunar scripture and so many resources, it seems like I have no hope in this lifetime. Zhuo Xiaonian also felt that Zhuo Xiaoduo did not get anything and comforted him. You will definitely have other opportunities to get more. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed deeply as tears almost flowed out. He looked very pitiful. This expression made Zhuo Xiaonian's heart ache, so she hugged him and comforted him. If the Azure Dragon Lord and the Lunar Star Monarch saw this scene and heard this, they would probably die of anger on the spot. Chapter 949. Anyone would want to beat him up if they heard him. You've already taken the fortune plate. What else do you want? How did he manage to say, I didn't get anything? You even needed someone to comfort you. Comfort. However, Zhuo Xiaoyan did comfort Zhuo Xiaoduo for a long time, because she felt that Zhuo Xiaoduo really did not get anything. He was really too pitiful. After that, the two of them discussed and decided to cultivate for a while. After all, the flow of time in the Tower of Emptiness was very fast, so it was rare for the two of them to be together. When we go back this time, I'll prepare to officially break through to the mystic realm. Zhuo Xiaoyan felt that she was being suppressed and said, through this soul nourishment opportunity, my Dantian and astral souls are greatly beneficial. I feel that I can suppress it a few more times. How many times now? 39. Oh, good luck. That should be enough. Zhuo Xiaoduo rolled his eyes. No, I have to at least hold on until 45 times. Zhuo Xiaoyan was fuming. The sense of crisis in her heart did not lessen, even after she obtained the true understanding of lunar scripture. Little doggy's luck was very strong, and he was chasing after her closely. The gap between the two of them was shrinking day by day. If she did not work hard, he might really catch up with her. Even if she obtained the true understanding of lunar scripture, she could not let her guard down. She had to suppress little doggy. If she wanted to spank him, she would spank him. If she wanted to trample on him, she would trample on him. With absolute strength, she would defend her dignity and her position in the family. What about you, doggy? Zhuo Xiaoyan asked. At most, I can only do it 40 times. Zhuo Xiaoduo sobbed and said, now that you've obtained the true understanding of extreme yin, it's only a matter of time before your cultivation improves greatly. I might not be able to catch up to you in this lifetime, let alone in a short time. TSK. Who would believe you? Zhuo Xiaoyan knew Zhuo Xiaoduo very well. She couldn't help but think to herself, with his bad temper, he has always tried his best to defeat me and catch up with me. He won't give up just because of the true understanding of the lunar palace. This time, he must be waiting for me in a trap again. If he said 40 times, then he would have to suppress his true essence to at least 50 times. It seems that I have to think of a way to suppress my true essence to 50 times. Zhuo Xiaoyan patted Zhuo Xiaoduo on the shoulder and said, good luck. Zhuo Xiaoduo patted Zhuo Xiaoyan's buttocks. Kitty, you can do it. Wow. It feels so good. Puff. Zhuo Xiaoduo flew out. Well, before he really caught up with Zhuo Xiaoyan, he still had to continue his career as a trapeze artist. 2 days and 2 nights later, Zhuo Xiaoduo and Zhuo Xiaoyan came out of the space of the Tower of Annihilation. Both of them did not slack off this time. During the 4 months of cultivation in the Tower of Annihilation, they had raised their cultivation to the peak of their current limit. In the last few hours, they did not dare to continue their cultivation. They were afraid that they would break through in the Tower of Annihilation. It would be difficult to explain, so they just did it for a few hours. During this time, although Zhuo Xiaoyan was very coquettish in the end, she still did a dance for this guy without knowing why. After thinking about it, it really hurt her self-esteem. She didn't expect Zhuo Xiaoduo to make an even more outrageous request. Zhuo Xiaoyan refused firmly. She tidied up her dress and hurriedly flew out. I'm going back to Shangjing. Oh, don't forget, in a few days our parents will call us. Pay attention to your phone. Don't miss any messages. Let's go together. No. Okay, but you have to be honest on the way. We're just in a hurry. We'll separate when we reach Fenghai. That's not good, right? It's not on the way. Okay, let's do it. In front of Zhuo Xiaoduo, Zhuo Xiaoyan was defeated without any surprise. It couldn't be helped. This guy was acting cute, acting cool, and acting cool. His sweet words were like a piece of candy that couldn't be removed. How could Zhuo Xiaoyan resist this kind of three-dimensional entanglement from head to toe? Naturally, her initial refusal turned into a compromise in the end. It was not surprising at all. Zhuo Xiaoyan frowned and looked unhappy. So annoying, he. The two of them did not hesitate. They rushed into the air and flew all the way in the direction of Fenghai. As the two of them reappeared and revealed their aura, The few people who had been secretly following them finally found the traces of the two little ancestors. They breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. We finally completed the mission. This time it was an eye-opener. Let's go back, I'm so tired. The main thing is that I'm tired. And that little guy's actions directly made my face bleed. Little bastard. Naturally, someone will settle this with him. Let's go, let's go. The four of them parted ways and went their separate ways. The four clouds in the sky also quietly dispersed. After a long while, a gray shadow faintly appeared in the originally clear sky. Then it rushed down like a wisp of smoke. It actually found the passage where the two of them dug the mysterious ice, and went in. At the core of the mysterious ice that Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxiaonian dug, the gray shadow observed for a long time. He frowned and was still puzzled. How did this little bastard find this place? This kind of hidden place was painstakingly searched for by the ice abyss which for a long time. But the harvest was very little. This kid just went all the way down and found everything. Little Yu's son has a lot of secrets. And at the beginning, there was a burst of dragon's aura that was so strong that I didn't dare to come down. What the hell was that? But now this kid has implicated a heavenly king. His cultivation progress is so fast. If he ascends to the sky realm too early, and doesn't have a solid enough foundation, he might fall into a trap. After thinking for a while, the gray shadow slipped out of the tunnel and chased in the direction of Fenghai. I'm still a little worried. Damn it, I'm really a wretch. In the early years, I was busy looking for a wife. When I found a wife, I was busy serving my wife. When my wife was gone, I started to worry about my daughter. After worrying for my whole life, I was cheated by an old thing who is older than me. It's not easy for me to not worry about my daughter, but now I have to worry about my daughter's son. If this goes on, when will it end? Am I still a freaking demon? Since ancient times, has there been a demon as worried as me? Damn it. Damn it, this is so weird. I usually call him brother, but he became my son-in-law. This is... After so many years, he actually didn't tell me that he had a grandson. That's what guy is really not a good person. If I didn't kill Blood Sword this time, I wouldn't have known that I actually made a little toy. I missed out on so many years. If only I could play with him since he was young. He's not human. I'm really drunk to have such a daughter and son-in-law. The gray shadow muttered in his heart as he chased after them. After chasing for about half of the distance, he realized that he couldn't catch up. He couldn't help but feel surprised. How can these two little bastards move so fast? Although I didn't use my full strength, with this speed, there aren't many people in the world that I can't catch up to. He didn't believe it and sped up again, vowing to catch up to the siblings. However, the Zhuoxiaonian duo had started first, and he had wasted a lot of time at the foot of the White Mountain. With the speed of Zhuoxiaoduo and Zhuoxiaonian, it wasn't easy to catch up to them. The gray shadow chased them all the way to Fenghai, but he still couldn't catch up. This is so freaking rare. Slap. He slapped his mouth. I can't scold him, that's my daughter. Duo, why didn't you try to fuse with that piece of jade you just got? Before Zhuoxiaonian left, she was curious about this matter. I don't plan to fuse with it for now. Zhuoxiaoduo frowned. I keep feeling that the result of fusing with it won't be good. Rather than trying it rashly, it's better to keep it as it is. Why? The newly obtained creation corner was originally in the hands of the Azure Dragon Saint. It was used as a life spirit weapon by him, and was specially used for killing. It was tainted with too much murderous aura. Not to mention, the people that this Lord Saint killed were all of very high levels. Any one of them would be beyond our understanding. Zhuoxiaoduo also had a headache. With my current cultivation, if I rashly fuse with the jade, it's very likely that I won't be able to withstand the resentment and evil spirit left behind by so many powerful people before they died. I'll easily die instantly and my soul will scatter. Zhuoxiaoduo was still very self-aware. If he rashly fused with the piece of creation when his cultivation was not high enough, and his spirit was not strong enough, the evil spirit on it could make him an idiot, even if it did not kill him. He was speechless in his heart. This kind of thing is actually used to kill. What the hell? Zhuoxiaonian was also a little confused. Then what should we do? This matter can't be rushed. I'll slowly think of a way. You don't have to worry about it. I'll definitely find a way to deal with it, Zhou Xiaoduo said. Okay, if you need any help, you must tell me immediately. I'll be at your beck and call. What I need most now is to strip naked and sleep in bed. Can I really be at your beck and call? I'm so happy. Get lost. Zhou Xiaoyan jumped up and turned into a white cloud, disappearing in the blink of an eye. This little puppy, he's talking nonsense again. So annoying, humph. Oh, I forgot to give him a kiss before I left. Should I go back? Thinking about it, it's already so far away. I'm not going back, maybe next time. Zhou Xiaoyan regained her iceberg temperament. She was cold and sharp all the way to Shangjing, all the way. The further she was from Zhou Xiaoduo, the more intense the coldness became. Almost to Shangjing, it was completely cold and unapproachable. Zhou Xiaoduo looked at the person who was leaving and snorted, very dissatisfied. When I was young, she would take off my clothes and hug me to sleep every day. She didn't even want a doll. She didn't care if I was willing or not. She would take off her clothes and hug me. Now I've taken the initiative to come to her door. And she actually took the initiative to attack me. Women. Women are too fickle. How can they be as loyal as men? Men from their teens to tens of thousands of years old, all want to hug someone into their bed. Chapter 950. Zhou Xiaoduo muttered to himself. He deeply felt the fickleness of women, and the biggest difference between a man and a woman. From the beginning to the end, from when they were on Mount Whitehead until now, Zhou Xiaoduo and Zhou Xiaoyan had never mentioned Jun Changkong. It was not intentional, but they had completely forgotten about it. Whether it was Zhou Xiaoduo or Zhou Xiaoyan, they did not see this kid as a threat. He was like air. No, air was something that no one could obtain. How could that kid compare to air? After watching Zhou Xiaoyan leave, Zhou Xiaoduo did not return to the city directly. Instead, he went to the south of the city, to the place where Bai Yunduo put the Astral Soul's jade powder. He saw that there was already a mountain of Astral Soul's jade powder. There are so many of them. Isn't it a bit exaggerated? Zhou Xiaoduo looked around like a thief, and began to collect the powder into the Tower of Emptiness. It took him a full 10 minutes to collect all the powder above the ground. Then he collected all the powder in the cave, leaving not a single bit of powder behind. Zhou Xiaoduo was very satisfied with the harvest this time. After all, it had been a long time since he came to collect the powder. He did not expect that the coincidence that day would last until today. How could he not encounter such a good opportunity to help others and himself every day? Even if he encountered it 8 or 10 times a day, it would not be too much. Then, Zhou Xiaoduo went to Mr. Sun's place without stopping. Young Master Zhou, Happy New Year. Mr. Sun was wearing new clothes and looked very happy. Happy New Year. Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned for a moment. Then, he realized that the 2 days he spent with Zhou Xiaoyan included New Year's Eve. Today was the first day of the new year. Wasn't it the day to pay New Year's greetings? Another year had passed. Thinking of this, Zhou Xiaoduo could not help but feel an indescribable sense of melancholy. Ever since he had become a cultivator, he had been working hard every day to improve his cultivation. He had been working hard, sprinting, and hovering between life and death. He had long forgotten about these traditional festivals. New Year's. Luckily, I spent New Year's Eve with Nyan Cat yesterday. Finally, we had a reunion. But I didn't even rest on New Year's Eve. I'm so tired. This 9 Heavens Pavilion is too inhumane. Nyan Cat has to go back to work on the first day of the Lunar New Year. Sigh, it's as tiring as the web novelists. They're all people who can't rest even during the Lunar New Year. But we're still not bad. After all, our cultivation level has increased. As for that bunch of useless authors, other than breaking their bodies, they don't even have a considerate one. When Zhou Xiaoduo thought of this, he couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. After all, there were people in this world who were more tired and miserable than him. Especially that person surnamed Feng. What was the use of having a high family status? But what was the use of being handsome? You don't earn much money, and you can't even rest during the new year. I really pity you. Io boss son, Happy New Year. Swishaoduo casually took out 2 boxes of 50-year-old table wine. I'm here to give you a New Year's greeting. You've worked hard this year. Boss son's eyes almost popped out. It was actually 50-year-old table wine. And there were 2 boxes. 2 full boxes. Oh my god. I can properly act cool this year. It's not a problem to act cool for a year. I can act cool until next year. Who would drink 50-year-old table wine during the Lunar New Year? Oh. Young Masterswa, you're too polite. Boss son received it enthusiastically. Please take a seat inside. No need, I'm just here to take a look at the powder. Speaking of the powder, young Masterswa, I'm sure you'll be surprised this time. Mr. Sun laughed reservedly, with a kind of smug look that couldn't wait to show off his achievement. He naturally knew that people like Swishaoduo were almost no different from gods in the heavens to him. Naturally, he wouldn't go in with him to drink. Immediately, he walked with Swishaoduo to the sports field. Swishaoduo came to the sports field to take a look, and was immediately shocked, because he found that the sports field where the Astral Soul's jade powder was piled up had expanded again. After the last expansion, a huge amount of space was drawn in again. During this period of time, there was no news from young Masterswa. There wasn't enough space, and the goods kept coming here. I was afraid that I would delay young Masterswa's matters. So, I gathered my courage and told the leader that this was what young Masterswa wanted to stock up. Boss Sun rubbed his hands and was a little nervous. He said, I didn't expect that. The management would happily give the surrounding land to us. The rent is very little, hee. Young Masterswa, don't worry. Swishaoduo was overjoyed. He said, not bad. Boss Sun is really reliable. Boss Sun said, I'm very satisfied that young Masterswa doesn't blame me for acting on my own accord. Swishaoduo pondered for a moment and said, it's better to use less of the banner. If you use too much of it, it won't be worth much. Thinking about it, this little benefit was still necessary, as long as it wasn't too excessive. And this Boss Sun was obviously a timid person. Yes. Well, I'll pay you later. You can rest assured and continue to collect. When you collect again, although the space is bigger, try to pile it up as high as possible. That way there will be a lot more. I'll come and collect when I have time. Yes, young Masterswa is right. Young Masterswa is really wise. Swishaoduo rolled his eyes. After collecting the Astral Soul's jade powder, Swishaoduo paid all the bills and gave Boss Sun an extra 10,000 yuan. He was very rich and imposing. This is the bonus for this year. Well done. After paying the money, he took out some top-grade tobacco, wine, sugar, and tea, as well as some elixirs that were good for the human body, but could not be bought by ordinary people. There was almost half a cart full of them, directly blocking Boss Sun's door. He knew that Boss Sun liked this kind of style. What he wanted was this kind of face. Giving such things directly was far more practical than giving money directly. Do you know, when young Masterswa came to my house that day, giving out the bonus and New Year's gifts, he directly blocked the door of my house. He directly used good things to block the door. Do you know what it means to block the door with good things? That scene was too shocking. The whole neighborhood was stunned. Do you understand? That Huazi Chungshan Taishan Chungshan that's called spectacular. Why do you want to drink it? Hee. That depends on your performance. Hee. Therefore, Swishaoduo would never be stingy with this kind of surprise, this kind of face, this kind of benefit without any cost. Anyway, the top-grade things in the eyes of ordinary people were no longer useful in his hands. When Swishaoduo returned to the villa, Li Chenglong was nowhere to be seen. He knew that this guy, who valued women more than friends, must have gone to Xiang Bing's house for New Year's. Thinking about it, he was old and did not come back. It was just brother Li Chenglong alone. Even if he did not go to Xiang Bing's house, he had to go back to his hometown in Phoenix City. After all, it was the custom of all high martial arts schools to have a 10-day holiday for New Year's. Hidden Dragon High Martial Arts School was no exception. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly remembered that when they parted, Long Yuxing and Wanli Xiu had said that the two of them would directly go back to their hometown from Whitehead Mountain. They could still make it in time for the end of the year. Thinking of this, and looking at himself who was all alone, Zhou Xiaoduo's mood fell again. He sat quietly on the steps and looked over there. It was already a piece of flat land, in the direction of Grandma Sher's house. He was lost in thought for a long time. How I wish the house would suddenly appear, and the white-haired figure would appear and shout with a smile, "Little monkey, it's time to eat. Let's have New Year's Eve dinner." Zhou Xiaoduo looked until his eyes were sore, and he finally lowered his head. He sighed softly and murmured, "Even if you wait for the new year to pass before you leave, I know that I will avenge you sooner or later. But I still miss you so much. I miss you so much." Zhou Xiaoduo squatted alone on the stone steps. He did not know why, but he felt an inexplicable sense of loneliness in his heart. For a moment, it was hard to suppress the surging emotions in his heart. He walked out of the villa and walked aimlessly to the street. Looking at the sea of people that usually filled the street, he saw that it was slightly empty today. Only the occasional New Year's greeting could be seen. As far as the eye could see, everyone was wearing new clothes. Every house was clean and tidy. There was a joyous atmosphere and smiles everywhere. Whether they knew each other or not, as long as they saw each other, they would smile and say, "Happy New Year." Zhou Xiaoduo followed the reins and walked through the crowd. Suddenly, someone came from the opposite side and stopped not far away from Zhou Xiaoduo. He smiled and said, "Happy New Year." Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned for a moment before he said, "Happy New Year." The person smiled in a friendly manner and walked past him. Along the way, many people greeted Zhou Xiaoduo and wished him a Happy New Year. Zhou Xiaoduo only felt that the feeling of being greeted was so strange yet so familiar. When he was in Phoenix City, he spent the new year like this every year. It was really no different from now. Everyone walked on the street with smiles on their faces. They were full of hope and longing for life. Even those who were unlucky all year round would be full of hope after New Year's Eve, thinking that the bad luck had left them, because this New Year's Eve was finally over. The end of New Year's Eve was the beginning of the new year. Now that the end of the new year was over, everything had to start anew. The bad luck must be gone, and the good luck must come. How long had it been in total? He actually felt unfamiliar with this feeling. He even felt a little out of place. Yes, by now, Zhou Xiaoduo could already be sure that if there were no accidents, his lifespan would far exceed the range of ordinary people. He could live for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even longer. The feeling of the annual New Year's Eve gradually faded. What was the meaning of this so-called New Year to him? Day by day, year by year, everything was the same. Was there no difference at all? He walked all the way. Unknowingly, he walked again to the neighborhood where Grandma Sher used to live. He looked up and saw that it was still a pile of ruins. It was just that the ruins had been cleaned up. Many people had built wooden houses and small houses in the ruins. The original houses had collapsed and were in ruins. The higher-ups kept saying that they needed to be repaired, but they had not done so. After all, there were too many things to do, and there were too many poor areas that needed to be taken care of. How could they have so much energy to take care of a place that was completely devoid of human life? Chapter 951. The people here were different from other places. Even though it was the new year, their faces were full of sighs and disappointment. Many people unconsciously walked to the side of the big pit, left behind after Grandma Sher moved away to take a look. There were no smiles on their faces, only sighs. They remembered that when Grandma Sher was here, the water, electricity, heating and other facilities here were the best in the city, and the supply was the most timely. But how did the people living here treat the widow of a martyr? Now, she had moved away. All the special treatment here had also moved away with her. If you knew this would happen, why did you? She's just a lonely old lady. So what if you treated her nicely? Did she lose a few pieces of meat? Even if you showed a little bit of kindness, How could it end up like this? Why did you have to make the whole community feel like they were being raised by a stepmother? When the young people in the community went out to look for jobs, when they heard that they were from this community, they were not hired. No matter how high their education was, they were not hired. Because their character was not good enough. What kind of sin did you commit? Everyone's faces were ashen, and they were numbly pasting the New Year couplets. They looked at their originally beautiful and comfortable houses that were now in ruins, and then looked at the wooden house that they were living in now. It was leaking from time to time, that many people were really regretting it so much that their intestines were swollen. Xiaoduo stood quietly in front of Grandma Shi's old house, as if he was seeing the stubborn old lady again. He closed the door with a bang, the scene where the wind and rain were all shut outside the door. If I hadn't urged Grandma Shi to move away, she would have been living here, and she might not have died. Xiaoduo was lost in thought, but there was no answer to this question. Many people noticed Xiaoduo, and some people recognized that this child used to visit the lonely old lady often. So, someone came up to him. "Young man, you." They were eagerly pleading, and their eyes were pleading, begging Xiaoduo to speak up, so that they could receive the care and repair they deserved earlier. Xiaoduo turned a deaf ear, and he was still looking at the original traces in a daze. "It's the new year. Happy New Year." Xiaoduo bowed deeply. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left without any hesitation. Behind him, there were so many people begging and pleading, but Xiaoduo did not seem to hear a single word. Even the look in his eyes did not change in the slightest. What does his death have to do with me? I'm not a saint, nor am I a good person. Just as you are regretting. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place? As he walked, he looked at Feng Hai, and for some reason his soul trembled. Looking at the city that was immersed in the New Year atmosphere, he seemed to feel that his mentality was slowly changing, that it was a very, very strange feeling. It was as if his entire spirit had been pulled out of this space. He was standing high up in the sky, looking down at all the living beings below. However, his body was incompatible with them, and he couldn't blend in no matter what. Xiaoduo knew that this state was very abnormal, but he could not focus his attention. After a long while, he was still in a subtle state of floating and dreamy feeling. In the corner, a gray-robed old man couldn't help but be shocked. Is this stirring up one's mind? Soul rebirth? This is not a state that only geniuses who have advanced to the late stage of the God-reigning state, or even to the returning mystery state, can develop. He's only at the Huayan stage. How can his soul power be so strong? Not good. How can a Huayan sea of consciousness control a soul like Si Peiran's? The gray-robed old man's chi sank into his dantian, and he shouted in a deep voice, "Tut!" With a light rebuke, a surge of spiritual consciousness wrapped in soul power suddenly exploded in Xiaoduo's ears. Then, Xiaoduo's scattered spiritual consciousness, which was about to explode, quickly returned to his sea of consciousness. In his sea of consciousness, Bai and Jiu were trembling in fear. They sank into the sea of vitality and pretended to be dead. Just now, it was the two of them who had absorbed the spiritual consciousness power and repeatedly cultivated. Bai spat it out to Jiu, and Jiu spat it out to Bai. Every time they exchanged, the power became purer. However, this time, when little Jiu spat it out, she suddenly realized that there was a faint shadow of a sword beside her that was secretly intercepting the energy. How could she not know that someone was stealing her benefits? She was furious and wanted to step forward to fight. And this nameless action caused the power that Jiu and Bai were swallowing to be unbalanced. The unbalanced power, because it had accumulated too much power, exploded in an instant, and almost blew up Xiaoduo's sea of consciousness, that if it wasn't for the fact that the gray-robed old man was experienced and knowledgeable enough to instantly judge the situation and burst out his own spiritual energy to help, Xiaoduo would have to pay the price of being muddle-headed for half a day at the very least. His sea of consciousness might even be damaged and would require a lot of effort to recover. After all, the spiritual consciousness of an innate spiritual treasure was not to be underestimated. Of course, the situation had changed again. Because of this change, the small amount of spiritual consciousness power that Bai and Jiu had leaked out had become Zhuoxiaoduo's. It could be said that it was a blessing in disguise. But the reason and the final pros and cons, whether it was Bai Jiu's Zhuoxiaoduo or the gray-robed old man, all of them only knew what they were involved in. None of them knew the whole picture. In the next moment, Zhuoxiaoduo suddenly felt a burst of clarity. When he opened his eyes, he suddenly had a subtle feeling that he had returned to the human world. It was a wonderful feeling. Everything in front of him seemed to have gone from a complete blur to 10,000% clear. Suddenly he jumped high and laughed. It's the new year. Before his voice died away, he had already run away. The gray-robed old man wanted to say a few words to him, but he saw the kid run away without a trace. He couldn't help but scratch his head and smile. Yes, it's the new year. It's the new year again. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Too many memories flashed in his eyes. It's the new year again. After a long time he caught up with him again. Zhuoxiaoduo ran all the way back to the villa, but he didn't go home. Instead, he ran to Yi Chongqing's house to pay his New Year's greetings. Unfortunately, Yi Chongqing wasn't home. He then ran to Wen Xingtian's place, but he wasn't there either. Zhuoxiaoduo couldn't help but feel puzzled. It was New Year's Eve. Why were they all missing? Zhuoxiaoduo didn't believe it, and called Wen Xingtian. Only then did he know that Wen Xingtian and his brothers had taken advantage of the holiday to visit the graves of their fallen brothers. While he was at it, he would go to the tomb of the heroic souls and have a drink with his brothers. Zhuoxiaoduo naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to disturb the gathering of his old brothers. After thinking about it, he called Li Chenglong and asked about the situation of Xiang Chong and Zhang Xuejuan. Li Chenglong replied that nothing unusual had happened. Everyone was celebrating the new year at the Xiang family's house. They gathered together happily and harmoniously. Li Chenglong then asked Zhuoxiaoduo if he was coming. As soon as he opened his mouth, another group of people took over the phone and invited Zhuoxiaoduo to play poker. Then Li Chenglong anxiously shouted from the side, "He can come, but he doesn't play poker. After playing once, there will only be a few cards left. He can pocket more than 200 cards and keep more than 100 for cheating." Everyone burst into laughter at once. They laughed and scolded that there was actually such a shameless person in the world. Zhuoxiaoduo cursed loudly, "Li Chenglong, you're ruining my reputation. Just you wait." Then he set off for the Xiang family's old house. After walking around the Xiang family's house, he found that the ancestor of the Xiang family, Xiang Quangren, was indeed not there. As a result, the whole Xiang family's house had directly become a paradise for young people. Zhuoxiaoduo didn't stay too long at the Xiang family's house. He went to the Gao family's house. Like before, he got up and left after a few minutes. Gao Qiao knew that he had too many things to deal with, so she straightforwardly asked him if he wanted her to help him deal with them. Zhuoxiaoduo thought for a while and said, "Let's talk about it after the 10th of the new year." Before and after the new year, the most important thing was to spend time together. Even for martial artists who had entered the path of cultivation, festivals were still very important things. Because, at any time, they might lie cold in Jianghu, or be shattered and scattered on the battlefield. Therefore, every festival was very precious. Zhuoxiaoduo didn't want to ruin it. After leaving the Gao family's house, he ran into Wu Yunhai, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Wu Yunhai and his brother stood at the entrance of the street, covered in falling snow. They seemed to be waiting for Zhuoxiaoduo to come out. Class monitor Zhua, do you want to come to my house and have a chat? Today is the first day of the new year. Let's have some fun and relax. Wu Yunhai appeared very enthusiastic, expectant, and nervous. Since the big incident in the Starry Mountains, the Wu family had no chance to mend their relationship with Zhuoxiaoduo. Since then, Zhuoxiaoduo's strength and status had soared to the highest heavens like a comet. They had no chance to touch him again. Gao Qiao, Li Chenglong, and the others besides Zhuoxiaoduo were like an iron wall, blocking off all the unintentional guests. Even if the Wu family wanted to make do, there was no chance. Even today, Wu Yunhai had to mentally prepare himself and muster up his courage. The entire Wu family was not in the mood to celebrate the new year. They were all waiting for the result of this invitation. Zhou Xiaoduo said apologetically, "I have something to do. Next time for sure." He laughed and said, "Happy New Year." They brushed past each other and disappeared into the distance in the blink of an eye. Wu Yunhai wanted to turn around and say something, but Zhou Xiaoduo had already leaped into the air and turned into a stream of light. He opened the space barrier and disappeared without a trace. Wu Yunhai's eyes instantly turned gloomy. He knew very well that the Wu family would never be able to enter Zhou Xiaoduo's sight again. Originally, their relationship had been mended. There was even a high chance that they could turn enemies into friends like the Gao family. Then, they could deepen their cooperation and ride on this ride to soar to the heavens. But now it was completely impossible. This also meant that the Wu family's title as one of the top families in Fenghai would not last long. Wu Yunhai was feeling dejected when he suddenly saw Gao Qiao walk out of the Gao family's gate. When she saw Wu Yunhai and the others, she could not help but smile. "Wu Yunhai, why are you here on the first day of the new year?" Wu Yunhai laughed bitterly. He took 2 steps forward and said softly, "Sister Qiao, I really envy you." Gao Qiao smiled sweetly and said, "It's nothing more than earning a living. What's there to be envious about?" Wu Yunhai smiled. He suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Sister Qiao, do you think the Wu family still has a chance?" Gao Qiao smiled. "It's possible. Everything is possible." Wu Yunhai took a deep breath and said, "Sister Qiao, I have a suggestion. I wonder if you'd like to hear it." Gao Qiao said, "It's the new year. What suggestion?" "Haha, there are still many things to do at home. I'll go in now." Gao Qiao clearly did not want to hear it. However, Wu Yunhai did not want to let go of this last chance. He took a step forward and said almost pleadingly, "Sister Qiao, I know that you're now by Zhu's side and handling many things. You're already like a housekeeper. The Wu family does not ask to be like the Gao family. However, if Sister Qiao has any needs, or if you're too busy, we can help you. We won't dare to disobey your orders." Wu Yunhai paused and said, "We'll help for free. No questions asked." Gao Qiao's eyes focused. She then smiled and said, "Yunhai, you're very considerate. However, look at the Gao family. There are still many people who are idling around. There's really not much to do. With so many idlers, how can there be a time when we're too busy?" Wu Yunhai said with a miserable expression, "Sister Qiao, can't you give me a chance?" Gao Qiao hesitated and sighed softly. She said, "Yunhai, you've already said so much today. I won't hide anything from you. Do you think I have that kind of weight by Zhu's side that I can just casually add another family? If the Gao family uses Zhu's influence to take in other families, then I, Gao Qiao, will have a chance in the future? You've found the wrong person to ask for my help." Gao Qiao narrowed her eyes and said calmly, "Zhu's cake is indeed delicious and huge. However, the Gao family doesn't have such a good appetite. We don't even have the guts to eat it. If the Wu family wants to eat it, at least the Gao family can't do anything about it." Wu Yunhai's expression became even uglier. "Sister Qiao, you're Zhu's favorite. If even you can't do anything, then what hope does the Wu family have?" "You." A sharp light flashed in Gao Qiao's eyes. She smiled faintly and said, "Yunhai, you really think too highly of a weak woman like me. I'm not belittling myself by calling myself a weak woman. In our small team, I'm really a weak woman. There's no one weaker than me. How can I have any relationship with the most popular person? If you insist on talking about the most popular person, then in the entire Fenghai, there's only one person who can help you." "Who?" "Li Chenglong." Gao Qiao waved her hand and went back. "Happy New Year." Wu Yunhai smiled bitterly. "Happy New Year." He watched Gao Qiao go back. "Then we'll go find Li Chenglong?" Beside him, another Wu family disciple said, "No need. Gao Qiao has completely rejected our alliance. There's no possibility of finding Li Chenglong." Wu Yunhai sighed softly. Li Chenglong hasn't even joined the Xiang family. How can he take care of the Wu family? This is a dead end. If we force it, not only will we offend Li Chenglong, Zhuo Xiaoduo, but we'll also offend the Xiang family. Now that the Wu family is in danger, if we offend them again, we'll really be destroyed. Gao Qiao wants the Wu family to die. Sigh. He sighed deeply, but he still couldn't figure it out. At the Starlight Mountain Range, the family had clearly made the move to establish a good relationship. Why did they suddenly hesitate and shrink back at that critical moment? What a critical juncture it was. At the same time, it was also the best opportunity for Zhuo Xiaoduo to die, and the time when he needed help the most. The result now was that the Gao family seized this opportunity, but the Wu family didn't. Originally, the Gao family and the Wu family had the same status in Fenghai. They both belonged to the middle-class families. But now, how long had it been? The Gao family had already become the top family in Fenghai. The Wu family was not only in the same place, but was also gradually declining. The gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. Now, even if he sent the Wu family to the Gao family's door, Gao Qiao, or wouldn't even bother to do so. One wrong step, all wrong steps. Wu Yunhai was indescribably depressed. Those who followed Zhuo Xiaoduo, Li Chenglong, Gao Qiao and the others, were said to have broken through to the God-reigning realm. Although Xiang Chong and Xiang Bing were slightly weaker, they were still at the peak of the cloud transformation realm. They were only one step away from breaking through, because they were all in the state of suppressing their true essence. Compared to ordinary peak of the cloud transformation realm, who couldn't break through, it was only a matter of a thought for them to break through. And he was still only at the nascent soul transformation realm. Clearly not long ago, he was still at the same level as them. How long had it been? And he couldn't even catch up to them. Once the gap widened, would it only get bigger and bigger? Looking at the door of the Gao family, Wu Yunhai sighed bitterly and turned to leave. He knew that Gao Qiao must be looking at him from the door with the gaze of a victor, who asked him to be a loser. That was true. However, Wu Yunhai still thought too highly of himself. Gao Qiao didn't look at Wu Yunhai from the door. To Gao Qiao, the Wu family was really an existence not worth her attention, especially after receiving the benefits from the Moon Star Monarch. Gao Qiao felt like she had been reborn. Her cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. She, who was at the peak of the cloud transformation realm, actually suppressed it to 7 times and broke through to the God-reigning realm. Miss, the Wu family came to seek refuge. Yes. You didn't accept them? What the Wu family did in the past, to Zhuo, is no different from a betrayal. So it looks like he doesn't care about anything. But I'm sure that as long as I accept the Wu family as a subordinate family of the Gao family, then our Gao family will be removed from the center of the group and never be able to rise again. Gao Qiao said indifferently, Why, you can't bear to. Bear. This person was Gao Qiao's uncle. At this moment, Gao Qiao's glare scared him into nodding his head. From now on, no one in the Gao family is allowed to contact the Wu family. Gao Qiao snorted and said indifferently, Third uncle, if you do something like inviting a wolf into the house again, then go to the countryside to accompany grandfather. After saying that, she turned and left without waiting for her third uncle to reply. Behind her, a handsome middle-aged man kept wiping his sweat. Zhuo Xiaoduo rushed all the way to Phoenix City. It's the new year. I want to go home. On the way, he received a call from Zhuo Xiaoyan. Zhuo Xiaoyan's voice was tinged with guilt. Doggy, I just realized that today is the first day of the new year. Do you want me to go back and accompany you? No need, you just came to the capital. Why are you running back and forth? It was rare for Zhuo Xiaoduo to reject her warmth. He chuckled and said, I'm very happy here. Haven't you felt the festive and lively atmosphere of the new year? Then you have to be good. Be good and don't cry. You're the one crying. Of course you're crying. Nian Nian cat. I can see your tears, ha ha ha. Doggy. Zhuo Xiaoyan hung up in exasperation, then smiled and wiped the tears from her face. Today is the first day of the new year. Dad, Mom, Nian Nian misses you so much. Where's my red packet? This doggy is really heartless. He actually said that he's happy. I'll remember this and settle it with him the next time I see him. Xiaoduo traveled across the mountains and rivers, as he used his fastest speed to rush back to Phoenix City like a wisp of smoke. He saw the house he had lived in for 17 years. He took out the key with a cute kitten hanging from his ring, opened the door and walked in. The whole house was silent, and it was out of place with the bustling atmosphere outside. Xiaoduo sat quietly in his parents' room for a while, then ran out. He bought Spring Festival couplets, the Chinese character for Fu, and many other things for the new year. When he got home, he took off the couplets from last year and put the new couplets on them. The whole house was instantly filled with a festive atmosphere. Then he lit the firecrackers he just bought outside the neighborhood. It was really a grand display. He jumped and jumped, covering his ears and shouting, "It's the new year! It's the new year! It's the new year!" Ha ha ha. Many people poked their heads out of the windows and looked at the crazy teenager below. It was a noisy atmosphere, but it made people feel an inexplicable sense of loneliness and silence. He was like a person who walked further and further away, but stubbornly expressed that he had never left, that he was always here, that he was always that teenager. Some people felt that the commotion was too loud and noisy, so they directly called the police. However, they soon realized that the child who had been jumping and jumping down below, the seemingly energetic youth, had already disappeared. Xiaoduo came to Hu Ruiyan's house and solemnly and respectfully knocked on the door. Hu Ruiyan opened the door and was shocked to see Xiaoduo. "Xiaoduo?" Hu Ruiyan's voice changed in surprise. "Why are you here? Quick, come in." Xiaoduo chuckled. "Aren't I here to give you a New Year's greeting?" As he spoke, piles of gifts were piled out, as if he was performing a magic trick. Hu Ruiyan was busy tidying up and complaining endlessly, scolding Xiaoduo for being wasteful. Xiaoduo just chuckled and continued to take out gifts. It was not until now that he suddenly felt that his wandering and lonely heart had calmed down. The teacher in front of him was the person who treated him the most kindly and had no desire for profit. Apart from his parents and sisters Xiaoduo, Hu Ruiyan was the closest person to Xiaoduo that he could not let go of. No one could compare. Li Changjiang came out of the room and chatted with Xiaoduo. Hu Ruiyan did not care about the gifts on the floor. She was so excited that she felt like she was going to explode and cook. Xiaoduo naturally had a sumptuous dinner here. All the most expensive dishes that might not even appear during the new year were all placed on the table after Hu Ruiyan's preparation. "Eat more. Don't drink too much. Li Changjiang, you're persuading him to drink again. Xiaoduo is still a child. Why can't you teach him something better?" Hu Ruiyan said coldly. "Eat this, Xiaoduo. Eat this. Do you still want to eat leek pancakes? You can't make pancakes during the first lunar month. You can eat them after the first lunar month. Remember, don't eat sesame seed pancakes. Don't eat any pancakes. Remember? This is a tradition passed down from ancient times. This kind of thing that has been fried over and over again is not to be eaten until the 15th of the first lunar month. Do you understand? We have to avoid this kind of torture. Well, when you have your own family in the future, don't forget this during the new year. You must remember it." Yes, I will remember." Xiaoduo ate until his mouth was full of oil. He drank glass after glass of wine into his stomach. While Hu Ruiyan kept rolling her eyes and nagging, he raised his glass with Li Changjiang. Then, Li Changjiang, who had been scolded for persuading him to drink, was the first to get drunk. Xiaoduo was fine, but Bai's face didn't even blush. "You're so useless." Hu Ruiyan had a new topic. "You can't drink so much, but you still want to show off. You can't even accompany Xiaoduo to his heart's content. What can you do?" Li Changjiang, who was like a pile of mud, said with his last clear mind, "Your double standards are really." Before he could finish his sentence, he had already fallen asleep and lost consciousness. Ha 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 ha. Xiaoduo laughed happily. Xiaoduo stayed until 11 o'clock in the evening. Only then did he bid farewell to Hu Ruoyun. Hu Ruoyun knew that Zhou Xiaoduo had a home in Phoenix City. It was the new year, and there was no reason for him to stay overnight. But she still gave him a few words of warning and let him go. Zhou Xiaoduo shook his head and forced out the smell of alcohol. Then he divided the things he had brought into hundreds of portions. Stealthily, he circled around Phoenix City and secretly sent a copy to the families of those who had sacrificed themselves in the Phoenix Pulse spirit. Many people only discovered the next morning that there was a thick pile of money on their dining table. There were also cultivation resources that exuded spiritual energy. There were also New Year's goods for the new year, such as tobacco, wine, sugar, and tea of the highest quality. Then there was a note. Happy New Year. 10 minutes past 2 in the morning, Zhou Xiaoduo went to Phoenix Head Cemetery alone and came to He Yuanyue's tomb. In front of the tombstone, the incense and candles were still burning. Smoke was still rising in spirals. He didn't know who had just left. Grandma, he old principal. I'm about to break through to the God-reigning realm. Zhou Xiaoduo lit the paper money and fiddled with it carefully. The flame grew bigger and bigger. Long Yuxing, Wanli Xiao Yu Moyan Li Chenglong Li Changming. These guys are all doing well now. Don't worry, the students from second high are all very promising. If anyone dares to disobey, I'll wake him up. In the wooden house next to him, there was a creak and Sister Lan walked out. Xiaoduo, why are you back? It had been a long time since they last met. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly found that Sister Lan seemed to have aged a lot. Her originally black hair was now gray. Aunt Lan, it's the new year. You didn't go back to visit? Zhou Xiaoduo said. It's the new year. I was afraid that your grandma he would be even more lonely, so I stayed to accompany her. Sister Lan smiled faintly. How are you now? The two chatted for a while. It was already close to dawn. The night was about to end. Zhou Xiaoduo was about to leave. Before he left, he said, Professor Lan, I don't think you'll be here much longer. If one day you see a red spider lily growing on Grandma he's grave, the day it blooms will be the day you leave. Sister Lan's eyes lit up. She looked up. Xiaoduo, you mean? Why didn't I say anything? Zhou Xiaoduo said, That's all you need to know. Sister Lan took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice, Can I still find her? Zhou Xiaoduo said, Even if you find her, she won't be He Yuanyue anymore. The light in Sister Lan's eyes dimmed. Then I'd like to see. When the time comes, we'll see. Zhou Xiaoduo used a drop of destiny on Sister Lan to confirm her condition. He wasn't worried. She would be safe for at least 3 months. I'm leaving. Xiaoduo, take care. Zhou Xiaoduo returned to where the Meng conglomerate's headquarters used to be. Now it was Phoenix City's scenic spot, the center of the lake. Finally, he left without a sound. He returned to Fenghai without a word. The trip back and forth made Zhou Xiaoduo feel like he'd grown up a lot. His state of mind was calmer than before, although he was still the same boy. Ayaya, growing up is so annoying. Zhou Xiaoduo pulled at his hair and screamed as he flew through the air. Behind him, the gray-robed old man kept following him. With his extraordinary cultivation, he naturally did not have to worry about being discovered by Zhou Xiaoduo. He followed Zhou Xiaoduo all the way home, saw him fooling around, saw him drinking, saw him setting off firecrackers, saw him sweeping the tombs, saw him sending New Year goods and gifts to many people. The fondness in the old man's eyes grew stronger and stronger. This little thing has a good temperament. It's just that he's too soft-hearted. It's a strength, but also a weakness. But overall he's not bad. He's a good kid. But how could Zhou Changchang give birth to such a good son? He obviously got my daughter's excellent DNA. Just look at this lousy name. What a lousy name. Zhou Changchang. Other than that long saber of yours, which part of you is long? Legend has it that a person's name symbolizes something. If Zhou Changchang is a long saber, then what is Zhou Xiaoduo? Fortune, luck, benefits, treasures. Does he have something in common with Xiaoduo? Speaking of which, this little guy's luck is pretty good too. He has so many treasures of the mysterious ice soul. If the ice nether witch saw them, she'd be so jealous that she'd die. But his temperament is too pure. He still needs to be polished. If he's so soft-hearted, he'll definitely suffer in the future. the old man muttered as he touched his chin. Zhuo was about to reach Feng Hai when he suddenly sighed with emotion. New Year is so boring. So boring. Fortunately, he hadn't entered the city yet. Otherwise, his voice would have disturbed the peace and quiet again. Boring? Do you want to talk to someone? A gloomy voice suddenly came from behind, interrupting someone's whining. Who's that? Zhuo was startled. With my current cultivation, I didn't even notice that someone was following me. Oh my god. That's so scary. Looking back, he saw a gray-robed old man, who looked to be about 60 or 70 years old. His body was slightly stooped, and his hair was slightly white. But overall, he still looked very tall, imposing and burly. However, the old man had a gloomy smile on his face. His eyes were gloomy, his face was gloomy, and his whole body was gloomy. Zhuo's eyes focused on the gloomy smile on the old man's face. This person is definitely not a good person. This was Zhuo's first thought. Then his second thought was, I probably can't defeat this person. Young Master Zhuo, who had always planned before taking action, and was extremely afraid of death, threw a luck point over. What the fuck? Nothing. Wouldn't that be much higher than me? Judging from his appearance, he's 99% likely a high-level fighter from the Umno Alliance. Zhuo thought quickly and suddenly laughed. He stood with his left hand behind his back, and his right hand pointing at the rolling mountains in front of him. He said with a smile, Old man, it's fate that brought us together. The old man tilted his head. Oh, old man, look. Doesn't the mountain range in the distance look like a sleeping dragon from ancient times? It's majestic and imposing. Zhuo sighed. He didn't wait for an answer and directly said, Thinking back to the ancient times, how many almighty experts couldn't wake up after taking a wrong step? Especially during this new year, I can't help but feel a lot more. The old man was slightly surprised and said, Oh, Zhuo said with melancholy. At this moment, when I see this, I can't help but want to recite a poem. Recite a poem? The old man looked more and more confused. Is there something wrong with my grandson's brain? I clearly appeared with the aura of an enemy. One look, and you can tell that I don't have good intentions. But after seeing me, you actually want to recite a poem? What's wrong with your brain? Zhuo still looked melancholy and flirtatious. He pointed at the dark mountains in the distance and recited. From afar, the black mountains look like soaring dragons. Thinking of the past, the swords were like rainbows. Once upon a time, the martial arts world was like a storm. Zhuo recited slowly. The old man couldn't help but think in his heart. This poem, although it was ordinary, as an impromptu work, it was still passable. Looking at the last sentence of the title, perhaps it was the finishing touch that made the whole poem sublimate. Seeing that Zhuo seemed to be thinking, the old man looked forward to it, and thought at the same time. What should he continue with the fourth sentence? He didn't expect this kid to have such literary talent, that he saw that Zhuo was slowly pacing back and forth, as if he was thinking. Then he saw this kid's body leaning forward, and his feet seemed to be exerting force. Then that whoosh. Chapter 952. Xiao. Zhuo, who was originally in a state of stillness, unleashed all of his strength, and executed the heavenly origin escape art. This was the strongest escape art that came from his father, Zhuo. His speed instantly increased to more than 10 times his usual peak speed. At this moment he was definitely going all out. This old man was too strong. If he didn't run now, he might lose his life. Zhuo's speed had reached an astonishing level. Even the space was shattered by his sudden burst, leaving a black hole in its wake. The old man was still pondering over the last line of the poem. What should he continue with? This kid's literary talent was pretty good. It seemed like the couple had taught him well, that just as he was pondering, he suddenly saw that the brat in front of him had disappeared with a whoosh. He disappeared. The old man was still in disbelief. He focused his gaze and realized that the kid had really disappeared. At this moment, the old man almost laughed out of anger. With your little bit of cultivation, with your little tricks, you actually want to play tricks in front of your father? Damn, that's not right. I can't call myself this daddy now. That would be lowering my seniority and being taken advantage of. Without another word, the old man waved his hand. A black gas flashed and tore the space apart, revealing a passage. As the space tore apart, the old man didn't even move when he saw Xiaoduo running for his life. He was running like a ray of light with a smug smile on his face, that the old man reached out his hand from the torn space and grabbed. Get back here. In this instant, Xiaoduo had already fled dozens of kilometers away. His movement speed was still increasing. Even a peak Skysoar realm expert would sigh helplessly when facing such explosive power and extreme speed. When he looked back, Xiaoduo realized that the other party wasn't chasing after him. Finally, he felt a little relieved. Who is this? It's too scary. But at least I escaped. As long as I enter the territory of Fenghai, the other party should be wary of me and won't dare to attack me anymore, right? Just as a certain someone was rejoicing in his heart, he suddenly felt something tighten around his waist. It felt as though someone had grabbed him, and then he was suddenly pulled back. Countless scenes flashed past his eyes. This was him being pulled back at an extremely fast speed. The speed of his retreat was even faster than his top speed. It was several times faster than his top speed. What the hell? Xiaoduo was shocked. Without another word, he grabbed the earth hairdryer. The space in front of him changed. In the blink of an eye, he was back at his original spot. The old man's gloomy face appeared before him. Kid, you dare to run? Pooh. Xiaoduo made a prompt decision and raised the earth hairdryer. With regards to this, the old man was obviously shocked, but he only let out a muffled groan. The air in front of him condensed, and the poisonous fog that had always been successful was completely fixed in the air. Then, he used his hands to gather it, as if nothing had happened. If that was all, although Xiaoduo would be surprised, he wouldn't be shocked to death. What scared Xiaoduo the most was the old man's next move. The old man opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous gas mixed with a strange luster. This part of the poisonous gas had entered the old man's body during the surprise attack just now, but the other party was completely fine and spat it out in one breath? What the hell? What kind of cultivation is this? What level of cultivation is this? The old man angrily cursed. Kid, what kind of upbringing are you? You want to kill me the first time we meet? The old man's heart was still filled with fear. This little bastard actually hid the poison made by the non-poisonous sorcerer in his body. Even if the non-poisonous sorcerer personally used the poison, it might not be able to do anything to him. But this time, it appeared on this kid's body. It was too unexpected. The sudden change caught him off guard, and he actually sucked in a mouthful of the poison. Although he wrapped it with his true core strength and time, and spat it out without any hindrance, the uncomfortable feeling still lingered. Strictly speaking, he had actually lost by a single move just now. Thinking of this, the strength of his hand holding Xiaoduo increased a little. Xiaoduo squeaked and stuck out his tongue. He almost peed in his pants. With a thought, the earth hairdryer disappeared. Then with a whoosh, Xiao appeared on the scene. A ball of flame appeared out of nowhere and landed on the old man's face like a bolt of lightning. What is this? The old man was prepared this time. Although it was still unexpected, he reached out his hand to block his face at the critical moment. However, he felt pain in his palm and subconsciously grabbed it. With a light boom, Xiao Zhao's entire body burst into flames. The heat wave even made the old man panic. He hurriedly raised his head. Xiao, who was lucky enough to break free, flew back with a whoosh and fled into the space exterminating tower, with its tail between its legs. His little heart was pounding. This old guy is too powerful. I can't defeat him. It's too dangerous. The old man blinked, and there was nothing in front of him. He directly picked up Xiaoduo and said angrily, "What was that just now?" Xiaoduo's heart was completely cold to the back of his feet. He was finished. This old guy is too strong. He was still not a match for him even after using all his trump cards. This time he was really finished. However, he still felt that he could save himself. He hurriedly put on an innocent, pure, handsome, and cute face. "Hello, old man. I'm really lucky today to meet you again and again on the wrong side of the road. I'm sincerely glad. It's really fate." Puff 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 puff. Wuxia was beaten up violently. What was with this long-lost sour feeling? Why did he feel a little nostalgic? He was beaten up. It was good that he was beaten up. Being beaten up meant that he wouldn't be killed. The old man was so angry that he didn't want to talk anymore. He was actually plotted against twice by the same person today. Moreover, both times seemed to be successful. Fortunately, this brat's cultivation base is not high. If it was someone else with the same cultivation level as me, I would have been dead by now. Wuxia was beaten up violently. He was not spared from head to toe. However, he felt relieved. Although it was an unusually sour and fat beating, this old man obviously didn't want to kill him. Let me think about it carefully. He was thinking while being beaten up. Then, he felt a strong murderous aura coming towards him. "Why aren't you talking? What about your flowery words? Your coincidental meeting on the wrong side of the road? Do you still feel lucky now?" What did I say? What was that thing that was on fire just now? It was on fire. It was a fireball. Wuxia had a fawning smile on his face. He channeled the flaming sun scripture. Immediately, a ball of fire appeared in his palm. The flames rose up and were extremely dazzling. Just this. A little trick. A little trick. Not this. The old man was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. I was already paying attention to it. How could I be fooled by a little bastard like you? Who am I? What is my cultivation level? Therefore, Wuxia put on an adorable expression and looked at the old man. "This is it. Really, this is it. Crackle, are you going to say it or not?" "I'll say it. Say it. This is it. Just like this." Channeling fire boom appeared. Crackle. The old man was furious. Wuxia was screaming in pain. His butt was already swollen. However, the more Wuxia was beaten up, the more relaxed he felt. Yes, Master Zhuo was definitely not a masochist. The reason why he felt relaxed was because he judged that the other party did not have any killing intent. Since he did not want to kill me, he was not an enemy. This old man's cultivation was so high that it was far beyond the scope of my knowledge. I had already plotted against this old man twice, but it was only a physical punishment. It couldn't even be considered a small punishment. He must be one of us. Could it be that my ancestor, the Minister Vigilant, has personally come? Who knows? Then this is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. There will definitely be a lot of benefits for me later. I am going to get carried away again. As long as I can make this old man happy, what's the big deal about my butt? You can go ahead and greet me. Even if you want to greet my butt with all your might, I can take it. After a long time, the old man suddenly asked, "What was the last line?" Wuxia's face was bruised and swollen. What last line? He had already forgotten. That poem. The old man was so angry that he couldn't vent his anger. Oh, Wuxia racked his brains. But in his nervousness, he had already forgotten the first 3 lines. Hence, he asked humbly, "Do you still remember what the first 3 lines were?" "Don't hit me. I really don't remember." Crackle crackle. Another series of buttocks greetings. The old man was so angry that he was panting. He thought that this kid was not bad earlier. But now, he just wanted to beat him to death. How did your parents raise you to this age? How did they not die from anger? The old man was puzzled and asked subconsciously. He knew his daughter's temperament best. If she met someone like Wuxia, she would probably beat him to death 8 times a day. With this temperament, to be able to survive under his daughter's hands and grow up to this age, this kid's tragic childhood was predictable. The bitterness of his childhood was even more predictable. It was unbearable to look back on and difficult to express. My parents. Wuxia immediately relaxed. Elder, do you know my parents? Aren't we relatives? The old man stared at him. What do you mean? Is your surname Zhua? Wuxia's eyes lit up. With your high cultivation, I can't even withstand a pinky poke from you. Are you a sky-inspecting minister? The old man was stunned. What? Who did you say I was? Why can't I understand what this brat is saying? How did he connect the preamble? Is he trying to scare me? Is he trying to scare me with his father? Zuoxiao Duo was in high spirits, full of expectation, and a deep longing that was hard to describe. Tell me, are you our Zhuo clan's ancestor, the heaven-inspecting minister? Zuoxiao's little abacus rang loudly in his heart. If he was, then he would be rich. If he wasn't, hee, my words were very clear, right? My ancestor is the sky surveyor minister. Old kid, I'll scare you to death. Let me ask you, are you scared? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.